It is 6:30, and I will call this meeting to order. It's June 15th, 2021, and we'll do the roll call to start with. Mayor Pro Tem Villalobos. Here. Councilmember Bunker.
Here.
Councilmember Shell Allen.
Here.
Thanks. Okay. Councilmember McLeod.
Here.
Councilmember Clinton.
Here.
And Mayor Glazers here. And we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, with indivisibility and justice for all.
And we're continue to stand. We're going to do the pledge to the Texas flag, and I've got it on here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of
Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. I will go ahead and lead the invocation. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you, Lord, for this time together, and thank you, Lord, for your blessings of rain upon our country. And Lord God, we just praise you for your blessing of our salvation. Lord God, we do ask for your hand upon us tonight as we make important decisions that we're leading our little town of Martindale. Heavenly Father, we just praise you and worship you, and we ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Okay, and we do have one public comment from Sonia Villalobos.
Okay.
Tell me when my time starts.
You can start.
Okay, so today I made a phone call to Hector Rangel, our EMC for this area in regards to ERCOT, the rolling blackouts that could happen. I would like to request that a blast go to our citizens in regard to the rolling blackout. Just notifying people of the, them wanting to cut back on power. As far as for our community of Martindale, we do not have a plan for a cooling station, nor do we have capacity to have one here. If our electricity goes out in this community, our electricity is going to go out just like it kind of did in the wintertime. We as a city do not have large generators. If an area was supposed, it should do it, it should be a town like Lockhart or something like that. But basically right now is going to be the time to start preparing. So that way we're not scrambling around with our heads if this does happen. We need to make sure that people are prepared, that they know they need to have, do they have a canopy? Can they go by the river? Can they sit under the shade tree? If they do have a medical condition that they do need electricity, they need to notify Bluebonnet Electric like now and let them know I have a medical condition. It's very important that, I have electricity. So those calls need to be made to Bluebonnet. So the EEA levels and actions, level 1, if operating reserve drops below the 2,300 megawatts and are not expected to recover within 30 minutes, bring all available generation online, release any unused reserves. So basically, this just kind of goes over, the plan, everything ERCOT is doing. But it's very important that we as a city start preparing now, and we know how we can advise our citizens. Also, if our electricity goes out, that means grocery stores, meat, everything like that, that is not going to be good. So people need to just be prepared and err on the side of caution rather than waiting for those rolling blackouts to happen.
Oh, thank you.
I'll just add one thing. Make sure you have a lot of dry goods, stuff that doesn't go bad, beans, rice, that type of thing. Because we could lose water and everything.
But like electricity, like we have an electric stove, we would have to use propane. We would have to, so these are just all very real scenarios that could happen here. And we as a city do not have any large generators to have cooling stations, so.
Did the city purchase the generator a few years
I'm not sure
ago? I
which one
thought
we're on.
we had purchased one
There is one in the storage shed, but it's just for this building.
just for this building, so we are equipped to have backup here for us.
Is it big enough to cool this building, run the AC?
You know, I don't know who's the last person to ever
Probably not,
even start it. We
Oh.
would have to get it out.
probably not.
And there's another thing that was brought to my attention, even if we did do a generator here to cool this building, that's something that municipalities are going to have to decide upon, because like you, as well as I know, that we cannot be asking anybody if they're vaccinated or they're not vaccinated. And that's one thing that Hector said, you know, that a lot of places are not going to have cooling stations. Some will, some won't, but that's still kind of like, you know, in the forefront of, you know, the thoughts. There's another thing, just like the buses came around for heat. I mean, the same thing could be done with air condition, but all that is stuff that you have to start planning. But just like I wanted to make sure that there is a citywide blast sent out and some information on our website about it.
Have we received official notice of this, or is this just something that?
No,
No.
it's just started. I heard it earlier during my lunch break. They were starting to advertise or mention.
Also, there's a possibility,
Yes.
if we have triple digits in Dallas, Houston,
But they
Austin.
have already put the warning out to cut back on your electricity. And they do have specific guidelines when you are home, when you're leaving home, on where they want you to set the temperatures at.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Good information.
Where can that information be found?
On the ERCOT website.
Thank you.
Throughout the state,
Mhm.
rolling blackouts just like the winter.
What I remember from the rolling blackouts, how quick the grocery stores ran out of food.
Mhm.
I think everybody should really get their dry goods together,
Mhm.
because you can't refrigerate. So we're gonna start stocking.
And I didn't want to say this like to cause panic, but it's better to be prepared.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, we're gonna go on to reports. Mayor's report on the parade. We're putting this in the electric bill right now, that's going out. And it's got some notes on the back. I printed it actually on pink paper, but I did this on white for this report, but, you want one? So I've been getting some calls, as to entries. I'm a little bit nervous because we are gonna line up down Northwest River Road, so I hope everybody reads my stuff and follow suit. If not, we're gonna have a little bit of directional traffic that we're gonna be sending back out to go around to get in line. And I put some bullet little flyers up on the doors. You can tell where we haven't washed the windows for a while. Both I and the court reporter were washing these windows to put up new things on the windows, so that looks really nice. And I put one up at the post office. So,
What about volunteers?
and we're working on getting volunteers. So if you know of anybody who's willing to volunteer, adults that can stand in corners to direct the traffic and keep the parade moving. And we do have a couple people to be in little go-karts to do some runs if we need to. So we're working on that. And then I'll have to get in the newspapers. I'm gonna work on that tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
So
so,
you're gonna put an announcement in the newspaper?
yes,
Okay,
yeah.
What,
like the calendar and stuff. And it
you're gonna do
seems
like the
like,
Guardian and Lockhart?
Mhm, in San Marcos.
You see?
We have had quite a day. We've had several mishaps today, and Dwayne Anderson is one of them. His car broke down in Austin, and this was hours ago, and he said he would try and make it. And as we can see,
He's with us. He's with us on the Zoom.
oh, he is with us. Oh, I didn't expect that. Sorry.
Yeah, he is on Zoom. So
Yeah, I
we'll
made it
still-
home, but I didn't have a car to get to Martindale, so I'm zoomed in.
Okay.
Perfect.
Are you ready to do the financial report?
I believe I am.
Okay.
All right, Dwayne, if you just want to share, you should be able to share your screen. My computer's on its third restart.
Okay, let me see if I can do that.
Oh, that's why we're not seeing you.
Can you all see the report there?
Ask Lisa. We're having technical difficulties in the room. We have audio only, but we have paper copies of the report to
Oh,
follow
okay.
along.
Okay.
I can see it, Dwayne. It would be nice if you like enlarged, went to like 100% or something,
Yeah.
or 100, a little bit more than that. Fill the screen up. There you go.
Okay. All right.
That's
So
fantastic.
these are the bank balances as of June 10th when this report went out. You see the general fund is holding steady. There's not a lot of money in the street and road fund. We've been spending that money on various projects. You see the court restricted money there and the police restricted money. And then the utility fund has a healthy balance. The deposit fund is just what that sounds like. That's people whose deposits we would owe back someday. The community development fund you see there, $55,759. That's the final payment from the coronavirus relief fund is sitting in that account still. And you see that we have $186,737 at First Lockhart Bank. And I'm tasked with keeping that below 250. So we're safe there. You see our emergency fund is at 222,000. And then our PFIA fund is at 209,460. We've got $142,000 worth of general fund money remaining on top of the 57,000 that's in the general fund checking account to make it through the rest of the year. So that looks fine. You see the hotel tax money is up to $36,000 as of the 10th. And then I moved this restricted child safety money that we receive from the county over into this interest-bearing account. And then we do hold some of the utility deposits there as well. There was a day when that made enough interest to warrant that. You see also our long-term capital improvement fund is at $144,000. So that $132,000 is, what we have on deposit to take on a large project of some type. And then you see the amount due the comptroller for the fines. That amount continues to be paid down each month, or that balance continues to be paid down each month. Any questions on the bank balances? Okay, so hopefully next we have got I'm trying to find I've got a number of tabs open here. Profit and loss, that's community development. Trying to find the general fund. Utilities, I must be going exactly backwards. Okay, so I now have on my screen the general fund for the fiscal year, October through the month of May. We are 2/3 the way through the year, and you see we're at $496,000 of revenue. As you can see, the top line property tax revenue is nearly all collected.
Hey, Dwayne, can you maximize your screen? There's some residents that are on the call that can't see it either.
Okay. Let me see if I can make it any bigger. All right.
That helps.
This, yes.
That helps.
Okay. This column over here that says over budget, it doesn't necessarily mean we're over budget. You see the numbers are negative. We have roughly $48,000 left of revenue to collect the remainder of the year. You see personnel costs there. And then we get down into the other operating expenses, trying to see if any of them look crazy. They don't particular. And so contractual expenses are at the bottom.
On the, real quick, Dwayne, on the street maintenance and repair line 880, are we going to start taking funds out of the special revenue fund, that restricted fund account, now that we reached the budget on the general fund?
Yes,
Okay.
we will do
That's
that.
just for potholes.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think potholes and some roadside mowing, et cetera, but it's pretty much just potholes that comes out.
And then another question, reference to IT upgrades and maintenance, 8035. I think some of that cost might have been the Zoom equipment potentially, or maybe other IT related expenses that were covered by the coronavirus relief fund. Are we going to reimburse ourselves in the general fund for those items, or how are we going to account for that?
Yeah, we can. I just hadn't physically moved the money over from that other account, but I'm happy to do that, and we can get these line items back in order from some of the excess spending we did on the grant.
Yeah,
but
I think
I want to say that
janitorial services is another one where there's grant funding. We've already gone over the budget, but we really haven't. It's the extra spending is covered by the grant amount.
And the
Okay.
grant money is in the general fund?
Well,
No.
so we manage separate funds for when we have grant income and expenses, and so would have to do inter-fund transfers essentially.
Yeah.
That might be the right way to do it, Dwayne. You're the expert.
Yeah, I know. I've gotten some emails from the auditor on how to properly account for it, and I'll need to review that.
Dwayne, quick question. Maybe you can answer me, Jared. On those pothole repairs on Lockhart Street by the county, do we know the cost of that?
The costs are associated with our interlocal agreement. They have not yet sent us an invoice.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that means we don't know how much they're gonna charge us to do the potholes on that street?
I'll have to review the interlocal agreement. We were going to take delivery of some pothole repair material here in the city on a week from Friday ago. And then we had some really bad potholes on Lockhart Street, enough that was impeding traffic, and it was a serious safety concern and would likely damage vehicles if they're coming through. We had some mix-ups with the delivery. We were going to take the delivery at the water treatment plant, but with all the rain, the ground was so saturated that the delivery vehicle it wasn't just a box truck, it was an 18-wheeler semi, and there wasn't going to be enough room for that person to maneuver in those wet conditions. And so we had to reschedule the delivery, but in the meantime, days were going by with those potholes getting worse and worse and becoming dangerous. And so I reached out to the road manager for the county and said, hey, is there anything you can do for us real quick in accordance with our local agreement? take care of it. We'll figure it out later. So, the prices are pre-negotiated. I just don't know how much material they end up using.
Well,
What hours they use, what the cost will finally.
How
Doesn't
about,
come out of that account,
I don't know about you guys, it looked like really good repairs. It looked like
did
very,
it?
yeah.
They
Well,
did- I was just wondering about the cost because like isn't it of over a certain amount that we all have to agree upon it as council?
Yeah,
And
over,
to me, it looks like it was a pricey repair.
over $1,000, it requires council approval. And that sort of case, when there's a imminent danger to
Yeah.
property and safety, I don't know, I can't tell you the chapter and verse, but I'd better be sure that I'm allowed some leeway to
Yeah.
take care of
Yeah.
something in that case. So
Yeah.
that's why we didn't wait till today to have that conversation for those repairs.
I totally agree. Since we have wet condition, you can't even see the potholes when the road's wet. So
Yeah, it was.
yeah, you had to do something. I agree. Okay.
All righty. Any other questions on the general fund? Here are the, this is the vendor balance detail. These are basically checks that were written last month for you guys to see. Let me see if I can get to the top and kind of scroll through these. The largest one I noticed on here was to pay the auditor, who I believe spoke at the last meeting, and we do have their final report. And I think I've passed a copy on to each of the council members, and I have one up at the front desk for public inspection. And all of these little checks that you, not so little, but these people, these are election workers. Mary P. Gonzalez, Mary V. There was a whole little crew over there since we had to run our own election this time. And otherwise, not really much out of the ordinary.
And just for the record, Dwayne, what was the total of the expense of the election?
Boy, I'd have to look that up, but I don't think that first report we looked at, I don't know if it's just got this election on it. Let's see. But there is a line item for election expense. So far, we've spent $14,000 for the year. That would have been for both the November and May election, though. So
Okay.
I'm not sure I know how much exactly from these reports.
But for the election workers, for the checks that were written out, the small ones, those are the ones that were across the county, right? Not only the ones that were here.
Yes, you're correct. There are some people over at the county level that count the votes or observe the process once the ballots are turned in at the county level. So yeah, and those are the small ones you see here. Like, those are the smaller ones. Here's another one. So. Okay. The next report is the utility fund, and we are 2/3 the way through the year, and you can see that we're 67% on revenue for the utility fund. So that is looking good, and we're 58% on the expenses. So we haven't had a particularly costly year in the utility fund to date. And then this is a listing of expenses out of the utility fund. These payments here that you see to the general fund, these are for payroll and other administrative overhead. A certain percentage of their budget goes back to the general fund to cover those expenses. And then the largest expense obviously is Texas Disposal, largest check that we write each month. Then the last one I have is the Community Development Fund, and this is the grant funds that were received. We actually received about $69,000, but the first payment was in the prior fiscal year. And so once I account for all of those expenses that we've been reimbursed for, this money will get basically transferred out of here and over into the general fund. So this is really operating money that reimbursed for actual expenses last year or this year during the coronavirus period, March 15th to December 15th is what I think it ran. And I believe that is all there are on financial reports right now. So are there any questions on that? We're kind of in the dog days of the summer, obviously budget season, and just quietly taking care of business right now, other than a big July 4th parade that's coming. And I haven't really heard what expenses are coming related to that, but I'm sure there will be, and it looks like we'll have adequate funds to cover them in the Treasury.
Any
So-
questions?
With that, I'll stop sharing my screen, I guess.
Thank you, Dwayne. Sorry for your troubles today.
Yeah, it's all right. I took my son's car from him to get some body work done on it, and while I'm driving his car around from the body work, his battery goes out. So
Oh, dear.
anyway,
Well, thank
But-
you.
I'll probably be up there in the morning. I need to make sure the checks that I wrote yesterday get in the mail and money to the bank and all that. So I'll probably see you in the morning.
Okay.
All right.
All right. We're ready to do the court report. Is Judge Fusco on?
Good evening. I'm here.
Oh, there he is. Okay, we're ready for your report.
All right. Good evening, everybody. You should have the report for this month, and you're going to see the numbers next to it at the same time last year. All the DPS and OCA reports are all filed and current, and there is my estimation for the quarter down the last line of that section. And the accompanying pages are just the actual numbers. So if anybody has any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Hey, Tony, when do you think we'll see the revenues come in from the court hearings that were just had in the last few weeks? Is that
Most of-
reflected on this report?
Probably not, but you're not going to see, I mean, when we get those people in for, well, I hate to get into the details of court operating procedure in a public forum, but let's just give you, just say hypothetically, you have got a number of people that have come in on pretrial settings. Let's just say 40. Of the 40, 20 won't show up, so they would get a warrant. And the others may negotiate a variety of dispositions that would result in anywhere from a little bit of revenue to the court to a little bit more. What I'm getting at is that that's not exactly a windfall traditionally. And I hate to kind of discuss this here, but you, as long as you ask, what we do have is, and aside from the revenue question, just as an aside, that the warrants, we're going to be issuing a lot of those over the next, I think I can get everything caught up in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And so we'll see, there'll be an uptick as a result of that, okay, in the numbers, okay?
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, the numbers are low, you know, and that's, and this is at the far end of one spectrum. And, but yeah, I do, based on that, you know, you're gonna see, the byproduct of that. But traditionally, I mean, those, when we have pretrial settings, you know, it's, like I said, half the people wind up getting warrants, and the other half, you know, a variety of dispositions that, you know, from 0 to 10. I mean, you don't know. But anyway, that being said, I hope that answered your question a little bit.
It does a little bit. The concern is, as we plan for later this evening, we have a budget discussion, and the court revenues right now is, you know, not even half of reaching our budget to this point. We're at $30,000 in court revenues. Our budget was $80,000 for that line item. We're $50,000 short on that budget item.
Okay.
We only have 2.5 months left for the end of the year, or 3.5 months to the end of the year.
Yeah, that, you know, that's
a $50,000 windfall in that time, based on what you're telling me.
Say that last part again.
I don't see us getting close to that budget number. Basically, right now the delta is about $50,000 through the month of May.
Yeah.
I don't see us achieving our budget projection.
Well, and you know, the court, all the court does, I mean, my job is, as is the court's job, is, as you know, is not a revenue source, but it's so the city of Martindale and its citizens have an open and functioning court. And that's my concern. And it's also a function of other things, law enforcement contacts, and a variety of other issues, a variety of other factors determine these numbers. So anyway, that being said, I mean, I'll be more than happy to discuss this with you further anytime you'd like.
That's good perspective for the council to have as we go into the discussions tonight regarding the budget.
Okay, well, I hope so. I hope so.
I wanted to ask, so how many, like you said, it's to provide an open and functioning court. So how many times have you had court? Are you back all the way open? How many times have you held court?
How many times have I held court? We haven't had court since COVID started, except for our pretrial, the pretrial settings that we had a few weeks back, as every other court in the state.
So there hasn't been any. No.
The court has been open. We don't have people. And I presuppose knowledge on your part here, and I apologize for that. I probably shouldn't have. COVID, the courts across the state and the country have more or less been closed for the last 15 months. Now, it left a lot of discretion towards the end to the individual courts. But to give you a for instance, and I practice as a criminal defense attorney in all the surrounding counties, okay? I have not been, I went to court in person the first time on a felony jury trial announcement in front of Judge Steele in Hays County. That was the first time I had been in the courtroom in 15 or 16 months, okay? So But the
Well,
court has been
I-
open that time. If people have citations or they're charged with ordinance violations or anything else, the court, of course, has been open during that time. We just haven't been conducting in-person proceedings.
And see, so I guess, because I've been to some trials that I've been watching, and they have been for domestic violence. And those proceedings have been held on Zoom. So I know that court has happened in some
Where did you-
areas, I guess.
Where did you
it's
see
just
these?
It's
Okay.
where it is, but I know because I sit on some of these courts. But I could get into more detail with you in that. I'm not going to get into it with you right now, but we could discuss it.
Okay, yeah, I'll be happy to meet with you and discuss. I'm not sure. Well, I don't even know what the question was really.
I just wanted to know, like,
I tried to answer it. I hope I got, I mean,
so when do you think that is it still closed because of COVID?
no, ma'am, it hasn't been closed. We just haven't had in-person proceedings. Okay, everything has been handled over the phone, via fax and via email. Okay, the court has been having people coming back in. It's been open for, I don't know, about 2 months now, probably. Okay, still asking people to observe social distancing and the mask. We're no longer requiring the masks. Okay, but it's been open all along. I mean, if you, the citations, people get citations, they still have to deal with the court. Okay, they're just not popping in, and and everything was being handled electronically and over the phone. As far as our pretrial proceedings that we have, generally once every month or 2 months, that depends on how many citations are being written. Okay, because we try to limit those. We try to limit them to about 40, but you want them to be at least about 25 or 30, or it's not, you understand, it's not the most efficient use of the court's time with Mr. Wymore, myself, and getting everything and having Letty set everything up. So we usually have about 30 to 40. Okay. But again, that's a function of how many citations we're getting in the first place. Okay. And so that'll depend on, I mean, we used to have them, honestly. I mean, I've been here 8 years. Things change, go up and down a lot in that time. At the busiest time of the court, we used to have them every month. Okay. And I mean, that's obviously, that's, not factoring in COVID or anything like that. But we plan on, like I said, we have them as many times as the need requires. When we start getting a lot of people that have not guilty pleas, I get a hold of Kent. We coordinate with Letty, and we all, we get dates. We agree on dates based on our availability. We send out notices to everybody. Okay. And some people will call and say, oh, I can't do that. I'd like it to have it continued until another date, or, let me handle this over the phone right now, and the people that don't, the notices that are out, then they ideally show up at the court, and then they're taken care of one at a time. And that's what we'll continue doing. I mean, like I said, we had our first one in 15, 16 months a few weeks ago. And so that was what we were speaking about a few minutes ago. But yeah, everything's going back. I mean, everything's been shut down, and I don't know, I mean, what courts you're involved with or anything, but I know that they have been, the Comal County and Williamson County tried, I think I heard a sex assault case a couple of months ago. But nobody else has tried one. I mean, we've got tons of cases on the jury docket right now, and everybody I know has tons of cases on the jury docket, and nobody has seen a courtroom, and nobody, sadly, most of them probably aren't going to see one anytime soon. But that's going off in left field a little bit.
So Judge, kind of bring it full circle.
Sure.
The lack of court revenue is not a function of the lack of holding in-person proceedings or proceedings in general. It's a function of the volume of citations that are being issued.
Of course, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you for your report.
Oh, you're very
We
welcome.
appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Y'all have a good evening, and if I'm excused, I will see you next time.
He's not gonna stick around for the budget.
He doesn't have to. Okay, thank you.
All right,
Oh.
bye-bye.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the consent items. Accounts payable. We've already heard the financial report. So these are just things normal things he has to pay. Does anyone want to make a motion for that?
I'll make a motion, we accept the accounts payable.
And do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, having a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Any questions? If there are no questions, everyone who approves, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, we're gonna move on to the discussion and action items. And we accidentally have one item on here twice. So I'm gonna cross off number C because it's the same as the first one. And I'm gonna turn this over to Jared.
All right, so I'll bring up something to share here in a little bit, but I just want to first talk about what this is. So the U.S. Department of Justice and their community-oriented policing support office, they put out a hiring program grant. And this hiring program grant covers 75% of the salary and fringe benefits for new police hires. It's a competitive grant. It is offered annually. For the last couple of years, there was some sort of court injunction or something that held it up, and so I don't think it took place in 2018, 2019. It does appear that one took place in 2020, fiscal year 20. I asked the chief of police to inform me when that grant opened back up, and it opened up in May with not a lot of warning. So I learned of it just a couple weeks, just about 2 weeks ago. The due date, the grant submission requirements are kind of in two phases or two parts. The first part is you send in some standard forms and say, hey, I'm interested in, this is who I am, and here's my identification numbers and such. And then after that, they send you access to access the grant submission portal. That first part was due today. And we went ahead and submitted the initial worksheets that are required to just say, yep, hey, we're interested, give us access to the full grant system. So we expect to get access to the grant system in the next day or two. The second part is due next Tuesday, a week from today. So it doesn't give us hardly any time. In the materials, they describe some of the things that they're looking for, but basically it's, community-oriented policing, and with some veterans preference in hiring selections. There's no act. I didn't know coming in when we're setting the agenda whether there'd be an action for city council on this item tonight or not. Given the progress that we've made thus far, which is not much, there's no action for council. But once we get access to the grant system, there may be a need for, probably not for a special meeting Monday or Tuesday next week to pass a resolution regarding the cost sharing. And here I'll pull up, because when it comes down to comes down to numbers, and let me go ahead and share some numbers and get the Zoom. Try to pull this down. Share screen. All right, so this is the initial worksheet that I came up with, but here's basically where we're at. So it's a 3-year grant. I want to try to freeze panes right here. I'm sorry for that. All the computer restarts I had. Now we'll go without it. So the cost to the city in the first year, which would be fiscal year 22, would be about $2,000. The cost for year 2, fiscal year 23, would be about $6,000. The cost for year 3, fiscal year 24, would be about $20,000. And then the matching portion for fiscal year 24 would be $17,000. And this is assuming that we would have a higher date in May. And so what it does is it's a 3-year term, but I'm splitting it across 4 fiscal years. And so the first 2, but what that does is for the first 2 years, keeps the cost real low. The big years when they want to see a higher match, it actually gets up to about $40,000 all total in fiscal year 24 for a new hire.
And you were just talking about one new hire.
Just one new hire,
Full-time.
full time. So this would be either somebody out of the academy or somebody else who would be a new hire to Martindale. The grant has a veterans preference, so we'd look at filling that with somebody who has a veteran status. And it would go a long way, I believe, into improving the level of patrols, the frequency of patrols within the city, and would take us to a police force of a total of 3 full-time equivalents instead of just approximately 2, and add some stability. So when we did our future year spend plan, this is something that we baked in, but it was assumed that we probably wouldn't do it till fiscal year 23, starting it. The discussion is going to be, do we want to start it now, fiscal year 22, get a little head start on it to bring somebody in to get that police presence up. And we're behind the 8 ball, frankly, on getting the grant together, clearly. But we'll see what we can do and get in, and if nothing else, is a learning experience for us as we go for
Well,
the next.
now this comes up annually, right?
It historically has come up annually. There has been stoppages in the past, but I don't expect those to continue.
Were we gonna ask our new grant committee to go for this?
So I haven't because we have not received the access to the full grant application questionnaire. I haven't talked to them about it yet. What I want to make sure we do is that this is a city-led, police department-led grant. Where I see their input and value is reviewing the submission requirements, reviewing our proposal, and given their expertise, possibly providing comment on, hey, this grant asks for X, you give them Y, you need to make sure you give them X, or making sure that we're in compliance with some of the grant requirements. I don't want them doing is having the grant committee writing a community-oriented policing strategy. No. But reviewing the grant materials, I think, would be okay. Now, the resolution that was passed didn't cover that purpose, but if city council is open to it, I think it would make some sense.
They're not going to have the expertise.
They're not going to have expertise in the subject matter, but they'll have expertise in the process and making sure that we're not overlooking a submission requirement when we go forward. And we'll be discussing the long-term impacts of this and other personnel costs in the budget. And so when we get into the budget discussion tonight, we'll have another opportunity to see whether this makes sense financially. But for now, I want to give you a heads up that this is what it is. And if we want to continue, pending the discussion tonight on the budget numbers, we want to go forward with it. We're likely going to need a resolution that authorizes the mayor, police chief, Dwayne to submit documents, and that we sign up and say, yes, we'll cover the 25% matching requirement, whatever else that resolution might need to say based on the submission requirements for the grant.
Okay, so we have no action to do.
Not right now. And if you have questions, I can answer now, or we can wait till we get to the budget.
So I wanted to ask, as far as our other grant that our police department was able to receive, who did that grant?
The one, so I'm aware of two somewhat recent grants that the police department received. One was for the Ford Explorer vehicle, and the other was for the computer equipment. I do not know who wrote that. I would have to confer with the police chief to see who was participating, writing that.
Okay, and another thing I wanted to say is, I know that whenever we did the resolution for the grant, it was my understanding that the word on there was for specifically for going out and reaching for the land buyouts for the FEMA
It was.
on there. So then when you were talking about having the grant, are you talking about having that grant committee looking at this grant?
If city council would like them to do so, I think they could, if it's narrowed in purpose of reviewing the submission requirements and the submission materials.
So the way that I understood the resolution, that the way it was written, it was very specific what it had in there. And to me, that doesn't follow under what we approved.
That's correct.
So I think that if we're going to be serious about having grants and we're going to want them done right, that we need to have somebody that a grant writer that we could call to, that we pay them and we say, this is what, we want you to look at this grant. We need you to go after this grant. Because I mean, as volunteers, like you said, and having the expertise and answering that, I mean, if we need to pay it so that way it's done right, then we need to pay somebody to do it so it's done right.
Yeah, unfortunately, we didn't have a lot of heads up on this. Bad information, bad intel, for whatever reason, the assumption was that this grant opportunity doesn't open up until August. Or the submissions aren't required until August. Well, that ended up not being true.
Mhm.
Gave us about 2 weeks to figure out what we want to do. In that amount of time, we wouldn't be able to publish a solicitation for a grant writer, grant administrator, like we're using with the hazard mitigation grant, to do this grant. So this one would have to be done all in-house, just given the timelines and lead times. If we are able to submit and we don't get it, when we would likely look to have a grant administrator possibly for this grant in the future and help us out with that writing process. I reached out to one of the cities, a smaller city, Schoenberg, got one of these grants for 3 officers last year. I tried to reach out to their police chief and city manager and hey, what's the intel? Give me the scoop on how you got it. I haven't received a response yet, or at least I hadn't seen it this afternoon if they had. So we'll continue to work this item going forward, as now that we know that it's up and running, the grant program is up and running again. Some grants allow for those additional costs to be covered as kind of the grant fee, like the hazard mitigation grant. That grant fee was allowed to be covered with the grant funding. Some aren't. From what I've seen, I don't think this one would be. And so it would be an out-of-pocket expense that we would not be able to include in our budget that we submit with the proposal. So it'd be additional cost to us, what, a few $1,000s, whatever it would be. So.
Let me clarify too. Also, these 3 gentlemen so far would just assist the city manager.
Mhm.
I mean, they would just basically report to him, proofread the application, and make suggestions, but everything will go through Jared.
Okay, yeah.
So that it's just kind of they're assisting. So they're not actually not writing grants, they're just assisting.
But I think like our wording would only not include what was
Oh,
stated
you're
on
right
there.
about that.
But it would, the wording would include and other grants as
Correct.
deemed by our city administrator, rather than the wording assisting in the specific word usage for the river.
Are you suggesting maybe we modify the resolution?
Yeah.
Might want to put that as a note for future agenda.
We could, and that might be the action for tonight then, because we did leave it up for discussion action. Maybe the action for tonight is a motion on whether to permit maybe not amend the resolution, but to allow volunteers to participate in the grant submission process or something.
Or assisting.
Assist the
Assisting
city
only, yeah.
on this specific grant.
They assist in review or something.
Yeah, to assist the city with the COPS grant submission.
But we're still being specific. It couldn't be any.
I think for
any grant.
I'll-
For them to be able to.
you're getting close to me stop talking and starting to talk, but I think it'd just be a motion.
Y'all could change it later if you want. I mean, you could make it any grant now, and then you could rescind that in whole report in 2 months. So, I mean, bottom line is, if you want to have a standing committee that will play more of an integral role in this, you can create a committee by ordinance. And if you want to ad hoc piecemeal it, you can make a motion and move that Jared work with the assistance of this group of gentlemen on this particular grant.
Yeah,
Well, but I mean, it's on the committee, it's only, my understanding is it's only a group of gentlemen at this point. There aren't any ladies serving on the committee. That's why I said that.
Careful. Yeah, so we wouldn't have time to go off and do a resolution or ordinance. The grant submission is due in less than a week. So.
And this is something Harry doesn't feel comfortable in taking the bull by the horns.
If the bull was going to be took by the horns, it might have been took already.
Okay.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Well, for example, one of the gentlemen involved has grant writing experience and has applied for that grant, that extra police officer. So he does have a background in that. So again, it's an assist our city managers to give him
Full discretion.
guidance, but it all goes through him. It's just an assist.
Yeah, I mean, the police chief's definitely involved. We've had multiple conversations on this grant, kind of what the grant requirements are, talking about community-oriented policing, what kind of strategy we put into the grant submission. But in terms of formulating the specific documents, he's on training all this week, the rest of this week. And so his availability is limited to evenings. We don't have a lot of time to get after it, so.
Okay.
Why is it the last year is so much less? How many pay periods?
Yeah, exactly. So in fiscal year 22, we look at 10 pay periods, and the first part of it within fiscal year 25, it'd be 16. Together, there'd be the 72 pay periods that are required for the 3 years. So the remaining 10 pay periods in fiscal year 25 would be 100% covered by the city.
It's a possible way of getting another officer.
Right, and getting our budget to where we gradually get our budget to where we can hire them permanently using our budget.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Instead of waiting 4 years until all right, now I have the money, let's go get them.
Yeah.
It helps to kind of cut that lead time down by a few years by having grant support.
So it would lessen the impact, of course, on our money budget that we have for the salary budget. The remainder of it would be paid for out of our salary budget.
Yes, it would. So the biggest impact is not going to be I mean, fiscal year 22, the impact of going for this grant is for the budget purposes is less, a little over $2,000. It's when we get to fiscal year 24 and 25, where it's a $20,000 commitment and a $40,000 commitment is where it becomes an issue. Now, the risk of getting the grant and then not fulfilling the terms, because we sign a contract with Department of Justice at that point. If we are unable to fulfill the terms of that contract, we are barred from participating in future Department of Justice grants for 1 to 3 years, depending on their determination of that. So it's something that we would want to make sure that we're committed to and we have planned for. It's feasible. That, just because we can afford it this year or next, we need to make sure we can also afford it in 24 and 25 as well.
And what if the officer moves on in between the grant?
It's for the position, not the person.
So we can just rehire somebody.
Yeah. And we're right now for the fiscal year 22, they have a starting salary of $40,000, which is not quite as high as the larger nearby cities, but I still think it's a competitive salary for entry-level position, entry-level police officer.
Okay, so you'll know probably by Thursday whether or not we need a special session.
Yeah, we should know by Thursday. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so there's really no need for us to do a motion.
The only motion would be if you want to, to make a motion that the city administrator and the city may consult with outside volunteers.
Just say it's okay.
For the purposes of submitting a COPS grant.
I make a motion to authorize our city administrator to work with volunteers to look further into the grant for the COPS office hiring program.
A second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? Lisa?
No, ma'am, I don't have any discussion.
Okay, is hearing no more discussion, all that are in favor of this, please say aye.
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 Okay, it carries.
Make sure everybody's good. They
Okay.
don't see any more copies.
The second one is on the road maintenance repair expenditure with Brett Denny.
Yeah, so I don't have any slides on this one. This is a, let me stop sharing. This is an item that we've reviewed multiple occasions. So it costs $3,650 for the Texas patcher, Brett Denny, as the person who does it, to come in and do the chip seal spray and repairs. And so the request is to be approved for another 2 rounds or 2 loads worth of repairs, not exceeding $7,500. So I don't want to round it too hard. So $7,500 when I'm looking to spend on road repairs, and have that authority on hand. So next time that there's an rain event, we don't have to wait quite as long to have them come in and do some of the major work.
Is it a good time to talk about, local agreement with the county to compare the cost? Once we find the cost to say Lockhart Street, do a comparison, is that possible?
Yeah, it's possible. We could wait. The difficulty in waiting is potholes are going to continue to creep up. I went ahead and purchased some materials, as I mentioned earlier, and finally took delivery of them. But it's not going to cover all that much. I basically got it on hand so I could patch holes that are bad, that are in the middle of the driveway, while I wait for a larger repair activity.
Because we can address that anytime. I think it needs to be addressed. So we can get as much from the county as we can.
Now, we did get a load of the
Right.
of those
Rock
50
asphalt.
pound bags. And Harry did put some by the Creighton Cemetery down the street, and it seemed to work really well.
Yeah, that's the stuff we have on hand. But that's instead of having Tommy Futch go out and put limestone rock into it, a road basin, the holes to try to fill them, because this gives us a better option for an immediate fix while we wait for a more large scale repair activity.
And a pallet of that was just under $1,000.
Okay.
So you need the motion for 7,500?
Yes, ma'am.
I make a motion to authorize our city manager with the amount of 7,500 for maintenance road repair expenditure with Brett Denny.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion?
So Britt Denny is a county employee or?
No, that's the owner operator of Texas Patcher.
He's the one that's been doing all the repairs, instead of just putting road base in, he comes in and puts the
Hot
goo,
mix,
the
yeah.
goo in.
Chip seal.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no more discussion, everyone who approves, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, and the last item we have here is for Sam Clinton. Did you have some bids for us?
I asked people to submit bids. I would have to ask Sylvia if she
No.
received any bids.
No, sir.
Well, I did receive some verbal bids. Actually, the bid amounts have increased because of the wanting of the city administrator to hire a tree person that also has a stump grinder to grind the stumps out. I did receive one bid for removal of the 4 trees in Allen Bates Park that we have spoke about before. I also received another bid of $900 individually to remove and grind the stump out of the tree that I showed you that's leaning over on the bench. I guess I can't follow through with, we can only discuss this, but I would like to get that one tree removed that's on that bench. The one individual bid that I did receive was $900, and that is to fully remove that tree that has been there since May 18th, down on the ground against that bench, and is a safety hazard. He will, the tree person that I received the bid from is Cooper Allen. Very good person, gave me some very good discussion, good concrete bids. I've seen some other work that he has done in the city. So I would like to right now to make a motion to have this Cooper Allen remove the one tree that is a hazard for $900 in the park and grind the stump out so we can at least get some work started on the park. Because
Sam, I'm sorry, Sam, do you have a hard copy of that proposal?
no, I
It's
don't.
just verbal.
It was a bit of verbal bid that I received. I asked him to submit a bid. I think that because it is less than $1,000 and it is a safety hazard in the park, that I would like to proceed with that. Being that it is Lisa Allen's son, I would think that perhaps Lisa may have to refrain from the voting of that individual, perhaps. I don't know.
Of course I would. Of course I would.
Well, the attorney is shaking his head
She
no.
doesn't have to, but she can.
Oh, she doesn't have to, but she can. Okay, I didn't know.
Will he grind the stump out?
Yes. I did you have a question?
I was just gonna say, why don't you just, make a motion to give the city manager, mayor, their city approval to, once the bids get in, to, as long as they're under $1,000, to go ahead and do it. I mean,
Right.
actually, we don't even have to make a motion because it's okay. But if you want to make a motion that if it's over 1,000 to get that done, to get it all okay.
Well, I'd rather not make a motion like that because it is higher than $1,000 and we have not received bids on paper. I would rather refrain from, because we're still waiting for a bid that another city councilman knows of some tree service person. And this has been something that I've been asking these people to submit bids. But I would, as you say, like to get that one tree done that is jacked up, the bench that's there, the bench is leaning over, it's right there on the right side of the park. And the bid that I received was $900. And I would like to make a motion to have that tree removed for $900 in Allen Bates Park and have the stump ground out. Being that it is a motion, I will contact the tree person and have him submit a bid tomorrow, or submit the bid tomorrow, or should.
I mean, I just need something in writing. I mean, it could be an email.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Yeah.
If we have an amount, maybe get a bid for the other 3 trees that we need to remove, make it.
Well, that will be over $1,000, and so.
That's-
It doesn't necessarily have to be competitive, does it?
Well, there's.
If
they-
it's
Do we
they-
have to get 3?
I don't know if it's over 1,000. I think you need at least a couple of bids.
The purchasing policy, as I recall, over $3,000 requires,
Over 3.
over $3,000 requires 3 competitive bids.
If it's
We,
under-
fortunately, I've been consumed with getting the budget prepared for tonight and a lot of planning and zoning issues, and we've had city council meeting every day this week.
Okay,
This
that's
month.
okay. Let's just
Every
deal
week
with
this
the
month.
motion.
So
Yeah.
I'm having some difficulty in getting a formal RFP published.
That's-
The-
Let's just
What do we
deal
need,
with
because we'll need to identify our set requirements if we're going to do a competitive bid. What trees are going to be removed? How big are they? What trees do we want planted in their place?
What Sam has said that makes this work is this is something different than general tree removal and replacement. Sam has specifically and clearly identified what he says is a hazard that needs to be removed. And so when you're looking at spending money, you look at the scope of the project as a whole, and what you can't do is break up a project and say, you're gonna take down 2 trees under bid 1, 2 trees under bid 2, and then replace those trees under bid 3 and 4. Break that up so that you avoid tripping a dollar amount threshold. This is different than that because of the way Sam has explained it.
So we're dealing with 2 different things.
Yes.
First, just the one tree,
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a hazard.
yes,
I second the motion that he said about the one tree that's a hazard.
for $900 to have it removed and the stump ground
Or
out.
around them. Okay.
And that's conditioned on Cooper communicating that price to Jared.
Yes,
In writing.
in writing. Okay,
Yeah.
I will contact him tomorrow. Does anyone second the motion?
Yeah,
I
Jan
second
did.
the
Second,
motion.
okay,
Jan,
thank you.
okay, so we have a motion to remove the broken tree for $900 by Cooper Allen. And he will email Jared or text him or something. And we have a second. Any more discussion about this one tree? Okay, here,
I'm gonna discuss, I don't feel comfortable like saying yes, because it is verbal. Like if we just said, okay, I give our city manager authority to make this decision based upon the discussion, because verbally, anybody could say anything. You know, I know that,
We said it has to be in line.
so,
he
to
has to
submit something.
text something to
Yeah,
Jared.
he'll submit a bid. The bid that I received was a verbal bid, but now that we have the authorization, I will ask him to submit an email bid to that exact amount of $900 to remove that tree.
And I have been to the park. It is a hazard.
But if it's been a hazard since May and it's now June, is it that, really that much of a hazard? I mean, if it's already been a month, if it was a
It's not
hazard, it
as-
would have been done last month.
Well, it's
Yeah,
not
it's-
an appealing sight and it shows irresponsibility of the city to not remove the tree. It's showing lack of coordination and irresponsibility of the city to address the issue and get it done in a timely fashion.
And,
It's almost already been a month, which is excessive.
uh-huh.
So I think this is showing lack of coordination and irresponsibility from the city.
Can I add
Something has to be
Mayor,
said.
if I may, Mayor,
Can I make a point? Can I be recognized?
Yeah.
That tree is laying on top of a bench.
Mhm.
So the bench is occurring damage. So not only it's a safety hazard, if we get the tree, get the bearing weight off the bench, we could possibly save the bench, therefore saving us money.
Yeah.
So
You guys were just gonna go down to the chainsaw and chop it up. That's what I heard last time I discussed this
And
topic.
see, and then like the whole thing about showing the lack of on a city and all that stuff and going on. And I mean, when it comes down to it, it's the parks. Parks has full authority to have a meeting. You could have a special called meeting. You could work together as a group. You could get the bids. You could do whatever you need to do as far as to have come prepared to the meeting. So when it comes down to it, you're right. It is about responsibility and it is about having the paperwork done. So for me to feel comfortable with this bid or any other bid, you know, like whenever it comes and it's done like in a professional manner, then you would have the correct documents, you would have an email, you would have whatever you need. I would just feel more comfortable saying, I give our city manager full authority to either designate somebody to go down there with a chainsaw or if need be to hire.
It's too big of a job for an individual to go down there with a chainsaw and someone that is not a skilled tree person. If you go down there and see that tree, it is a large hackberry tree. And it's gonna take someone quite a bit of time in order to get it out, get it removed and grind the stump down. We have $10,000 remaining in the park budget. And so I think spending $900 on something that should have been done weeks ago or even immediately after it fell down on that bench is something that, and it's also fallen down in the area of the park on the right side where we had received some grants in the past for a native garden. Well, that tree is laying all over the native garden. All the plants that were there in the native garden are now underneath this tree that has been sitting there for a month. And I did receive a bid for the whole removal and it was not submitted, but he individually submitted the bid for $900.
Lisa has,
Let me, come on.
has to be recognized.
Sorry, Lisa.
Hi. Yes, Lisa?
yes, thank you. If I may, I just wanted to acknowledge that Sam has been talking and trying to talk about this tonight. This is the first time I've had a better, or I should say full understanding of the actual task at hand. It has been brought up, it just hasn't not been dealt with. The other thing that I would like to say is that because Parks does have the ability to spend under $1,000, if a motion is made, and I believe there was one made, it can be passed, albeit that the bid comes in and matches the motion. If the bid comes in and does not match the motion, then it dies, no matter whether we approved it or not.
Yeah. Okay,
I'm
we're ready.
just trying to make sure things go forward. I'm just trying to help things go forward.
Okay,
One
Yes.
more point.
one more point.
Mr. Clinton, the guy that I talked about, tree removal, he's not interested, he's busy now. And the problem you're running into with a small job like that, a lot of times people don't want to mess with it. Like my guy, I told him to go bid and he never took, of course, he had another job and he left.
Oh, okay.
So,
So is he a professional tree person?
Yes. Oh, yes.
I've seen
yes.
him in
The one that
action
you're
too.
talking about?
Oh, yes.
I've seen his whole crew in action. They're
He
they're
just-
unbelievable. They're good.
He just did a huge job on Main Street at Susan Schoon's house, removed several big trees. He also gave me bids on other trees on the Three Rivers Church property where I had a tree fall on my house on May 18th. He's given me bids on all of that. I have his
We're ready to
card.
go.
I have his,
We're ready to
I
go.
have his business
Oh,
card.
we're ready to go,
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah.
So we have a motion, we have a second, and let's just do it. Sonia, how do you vote?
No, because I would like paperwork.
Oh, and he has to, part of the motion was he has to email or text Jared, so he will. Jan, how do you
Aye.
vote? Mike, how do you vote? And Sam?
Aye.
No,
Lisa?
just-
I can't vote.
No, you can't just have her not do it, just to be safe.
Yeah, okay. So
Um,
we have three
Are you,
yeses
wait,
and one no.
hello, are you
So
gonna
the
ask me
motion
again?
carries.
I'm sorry?
Yes,
I
Lisa?
did you already call for the vote? I mean, you
Yes,
didn't you didn't call my name for the vote.
Lisa, I told him not to do yours to be safe.
She wants to recuse.
Well,
If you-
I was
if you-
going to recuse for the record.
Okay,
Okay.
Okay.
that's fine.
You don't
It passed.
just skip somebody over. You have to have an answer. So one way or another, you gotta have an answer.
Okay, Lisa, how do you vote?
I recuse myself,
Thank you.
as in abstain. Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Okay, so we have one abstention, one no, and three yeses, so the motion carries. Okay, and so that is all of the business that we have tonight. And we will have a budget meeting. Do you want a few minutes for a break, or do you want to just go straight?
I would
in?
like a break.
Okay, so we will have like a 5-minute break,
You can close for break.
and
Motion for recess.
yes, can I have a motion? Well, do I need a
So moved.
recess or to close this meeting? Don't I close this?
You can close it too.
And then we're gonna open the budget meeting.
The motion to
And
close.
Sonia is making a motion to adjourn this city council
I'll
meeting. Do I
second
have a second? And Lisa
Lisa
second.
seconds it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Everyone who approves, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. It is 7:52.
I'm just going to put us on mute. I'll keep the cameras on. We're off, we're off.
Fortunately, we're paid by the hour.
All right, the big thing we're gonna focus on.
Is the
for
budget.
Lisa back.
Yeah, we don't, oh, here's the spreadsheet.
The budget right here.
Yeah.
You can open the meeting, like you know you would, and call roll.
And call the roll again, okay. Oh, I was waiting, it's okay.
And here's your agenda for that.
Oh, I didn't have the agenda. Okay, I'm gonna call this budget meeting to order. It is 8:04 and it is June 15th, 2021. And I will do the roll call. Mayor Pro Tem Villalobos. Here. Councilmember Bunker.
Here.
Councilmember Shell Allen.
Here,
Councilmember McLeod.
Here.
Councilmember Clinton.
Here.
And Mayor Glaze is here. We're not gonna do the Pledge of Allegiance and everything again. We don't need to do that. Okay, so, we are gonna turn this over to Jared
All right.
and talk about the budget.
So,
I'm gonna sit over here just so it's easier for me to see
Yeah.
the.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
all right, so, first up, just kind of give a quick rundown on some due dates we have coming up for this thing to kind of set the stage. So the chief appraiser's office has some due dates that are coming up in July. Typically, they come in advance. So what I expect is in the next couple of weeks, I will receive from the CAD office the certified rolls and estimates for our different property tax rates. Those have to come in no later than July 25th. The next date is no later than August 5th. We have to publish notice for a budget hearing. Likely, we will want to do that in July, near middle of July, so to get us on the path to success. August 7th is when we have to submit the no new revenue and voter approval tax rates to city council. Again, this will likely happen in July. And then the budget has to be filed no later than August 29th for public review. And then that takes us on the path to hold our public hearings and establish and adopt the budget no later than September 29th. So that's all on the path to get us to by the end of the fiscal year, get us our budget in place. Like, we'll try to have this teed up so we're in position to adopt the budget that first council meeting of September, and then we have some space the remainder of the month. If for some reason that meeting doesn't go well, it gives us a few weeks to adjust fire and make changes. So tonight's discussion is for the benefit of the city council and also benefit for myself to get some initial feedback on policy considerations, spending priorities, and in anticipation of receiving those final tax numbers, to build a more complete budget. But for right now, I've built it off of the estimated tax rolls as they exist today. So we'll jump into it. So the budget components, our budget is composed of 4 different funds: the general fund, which funds normal city operations; our utility fund, which services our wastewater and solid waste services, revenues and expenses; our special revenue fund, which was established brand new in fiscal year 21, is for restricted use revenue and expenses. So the hotel tax fund, the street and road sales tax portion, the court restricted funds. We set this up so it doesn't get commingled with our general fund, make sure we don't overspend. And then we have the community development fund, sometimes called the grant fund. It's for grant funded operations. We don't budget for that fund because it's kind of comes in and goes out, and all the expenses take place on our general fund side. That might be when we get into the larger grant we just got, there might be some budgeting with doing that, but depending on the guidance that Dwayne's going to receive or has received from our auditors, and we'll work together on how we handle that when it comes to the coronavirus relief fund, as we talked earlier in our financial reports. So that's how it's set up. 4 different funds, the main 2, general fund, utility fund. We also have special revenue fund. Any questions on that slide? All right. So let's start off with the general fund. So on this screen, you'll see as we go forward some data. This data reflects a worksheet, Excel worksheet that you received on Thursday. Those in the room, we also have a paper copy of some of that data. And as we need to, I can refer back to the Excel sheet that has the data on it. But for now, we'll work off the slides because I think it's cleaner and easier to read. So the numbers that you see here across the top are the actual revenues and expenses for the general fund in fiscal year 2020. And then you see the budget numbers for fiscal year 21. We have a projected end of fiscal year for 21. It's a projection, so those numbers are going to shift. That data was using the financial reports that were current through the end of April. We just went over the ones that were current through the end of May. So just that 1 month update, you'll see some shift as we go forward. So you'll see that shift a little bit. There could be some assumptions being made that when we get to like IT costs or some other things that are funded by the coronavirus fund that get a little inflated. So, but all in all, for the most part, it's a good barometer of where we're going, where we're tracking to. The next item is getting into our 22. What we're looking to achieve is our fiscal year 22. I just noticed I missed the title slide on this. I was putting this together. This is a fiscal year 22 budget is what we're going for. So I included our future year spend plan numbers as a point of reference for us. So we went through a future year spend plan that charted the financial decisions and considerations to achieve those strategic priorities in our community strategic plan. And I thought it'd be valuable for us to have those numbers on hand as we go through the budget, so we have that point of consideration. The last column is the 22 proposed budget. And you'll see here on the revenues and expenses, the total revenues for the proposed budget is $585,000 for the general fund. And the total expenses are balanced out at $585,000. And I'll get into some of these items in a second. Any questions on the summary?
On the property taxes, is that like projected based on previous evaluation?
Yeah. And we'll dive deep into most, if not all of these items on this summary. But I just want to make sure people are familiar with what we're looking at. Any other questions?
So you mentioned 5,885 twice, as a projection and as a budget, or because I only see 572.
Oh, yes.
You mentioned 5,885 twice.
Yeah, so this summary has both the revenue and expenses. So the top portion is our revenue numbers for actuals, the budget, our projection, our future year spend plan, and our proposed budget. The column that we'll focus on for tonight for consideration of what we're going to adopt is the proposed budget. The total revenue on the proposed budget is $585,000. Below the revenue portion, you have the expenses portion. So you see the payroll expense, the operating expenses, and the total of all those expenses is balanced out. You can see in our projection for the end of fiscal year, we're projected to have a little bit of a surplus, budget surplus in the general fund. We'll see if that holds. All right, we'll go to the next slide and start diving a little deeper. So this gives it's another way of looking at basically the same data, but each bar represents the different years. So those gray bars are 2018, 2019, and 2020 actual revenues. Focus on revenues here for a minute. And then the color coded refers, following along on your spreadsheet, our color code the same way for the 21 budget and projected, and then the 22 future year spend plan, and then the 22 proposed budget. This kind of gives you a little bit of a trend look. Want to point out that the court revenues have dramatically underperformed against expectations the last 2 fiscal years. We, in fiscal year 18 and 19, we had $99,000 and $104,000 respectively in the court revenues. We budgeted similarly going into fiscal year 20 and underperformed. We only had $58,000 in our court revenues. This year, our projected for fiscal year 21 is to finish up somewhere around $46,000. Our budget was much higher than that. Our budget was $80,000. There are some proposals that are in here, particularly pertaining to the personnel costs, where, like the COTS grant and others, we're meeting our municipal court revenue budget numbers is very important. The reason why we're staying afloat this year is because our sales tax has dramatically outperformed our budget to the tune of, according to this projection, the difference between the 21 budget was $54,000 in the general fund. Right now, we're projecting that to be $73,000 at the end of the year. But based on the data that I saw in this most recent report, that number is even going to go up. I think we had, our sales tax revenue through May was $66,000.
What do you contribute that to? Just business next door?
This next door, more home shopping, so more sales tax being collected on internet transactions. That's typically been it. Dwayne, any comments on what you would attribute that sales tax increase to?
Well, can you hear me?
Yeah.
The thing that we do have to consider is the percentage of that pays off the debt to the state. The numbers that are on the P&L are the gross numbers.
Oh,
And
okay, they're not net.
in
Okay,
years
that's
past, we kind of had a double stacked bar that showed how much of it comes in and then how much we really realize.
Okay.
So I forget what the percentage is that they keep. Isn't it 20?
20%.
20%.
So
So
my
if I'm
number
looking
that I
up
gave
here-
you,
Yeah, that profit and loss number, the 66,000, that's the gross number. That's not the city's general fund amount.
that's right. That's the gross revenue. And 20% of that revenue is used to pay down the debt to the state.
Okay.
Yeah, 20% of the sales tax. I would like to see that separated. Is there a particular reason why it's no longer realized as such?
Well, it's probably incorrect assumption on my part. What I understood the profit and loss data to be is by their fund accounting, but that appears to not be the case. So I will have to go back and adjust the calculation for that projection. The sales tax number, here, I'll pull, this is probably an opportunity where it works best to pull in our spreadsheet. So here's the data that's beating the sales tax projections and proposed budget for fiscal year 22. The assumption is, projection is that we'd have a total collected sales tax amount of $120,000. The repayment going to the state is 20% of that, $24,000. Another 20% of the 120,000 goes to street and road maintenance restricted account, special revenue fund. And then the balance would go to the general fund at $72,000. So
Okay.
on the slides, I was attempting to reflect in the numbers from years past did not have the street and roads restricted the way we do now. So that's why they're higher. However, I was attempting to show of the general fund amount what would be available.
So it sounds like you did it correctly. It, to me.
Yeah,
Yeah, we just don't want that. We just don't want that 20% of the state to be lost in the shuffle, and not literally lost, just lost for our discussion and decision making.
Everybody needs to know about it. I'm still kind of confused about the court costs and why the sales is making up for that. Is that just to keep ourselves in budget? Or,
No.
yeah. Well, real quick. So I think I'm doing this right, Dwayne. If I was using the April data, if I were to update this, I would put my $66,000 where the 56 is, but the data poll is taking that 80%.
Yeah, that looks right.
That gets me to the projected 72 for the general fund.
Okay.
All right. Your question, Jan?
yeah, I just don't understand I mean, we're just trying to stay in balance with the budget.
Yeah, so in fiscal year 21, if we're projecting to be short about $30-some thousand, $34,000 in a municipal court, but our sales tax is projected to have a surplus of $20,000, then the net for us is down on those two items alone to $10,000 about.
So, but our concerns.
Hey, Jan. Jan.
Are, let me finish my concern so you understand.
Yes,
Is that the courts aren't paying for their expenses. They're not making enough money to pay their expenses, so it's having to come out of our general fund to help them with expenses, correct?
Not necessarily.
No.
The court costs, just the court itself, the personnel costs are less than the budgeted amount. So
Hey, Jan, I think there was a misunderstanding.
Software and.
Right. We have not, and this is something that city council wants, I can try to do. It's a little difficult the way we have our chart of accounts, the way we have our accounting numbers set up. We don't have it separated by functional or division. So I can't say this is the police department's amount, this is the court's amount, this is the administration's amount.
We're not allowed to do.
No, we could.
That would be very beneficial.
It would take some work. On the revenue side, we have not equated a revenue line item directly with an expense item except for our special restricted funds.
May I say something quickly?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Hey, Jan, I think there was a little misunderstanding. I kind of heard it, and then your question made sense, but yet not so much. What I heard you asking was, are we using the sales tax to make up for what the court has not produced? That was a valid question. However, what I heard Jared explain was merely a correlation. It just so happens that the account that holds the sales tax is higher than we expected, and the account that holds the court is lower than we expected. That could have been any particular account. He was just making a correlation. It's not like that was done on purpose. that
Right.
make sense?
And I don't, so what, given the discussion we had with the judge earlier, where we were asking him whether the court revenue was a function of the amount of in-person or hearings that they're holding. And he said, no, it's a function of the number of citations that are issued. And so you could infer that less citations are being issued in 2020 and 2021 than were being issued in the years prior. And that's what's driving our court revenue being lower. And our bottom line is being bailed out by our increase in sales tax. If we did not have an increase in sales tax, we could possibly be in a budget deficit situation.
So the citations would be a very good thing to have if we can, to have something showing that.
I mean, it's showing it right there.
Yeah, to bring it in, to specific for each department or whatever, to correlate why we're not getting the revenues. Is it citations or lack of people not paying their fines or not?
Yeah.
Or whatever, that'd be beneficial, I think.
Yeah, we could spend the time on it. I think it's worth looking into, because if we assume a balanced budget and we spend to our balanced budget, but our revenue side does not keep up, and this next year, if we're not as conservative in our sales tax projections as we were in the years past, and we are still, pretty aggressive in projecting our municipal court revenues, we could put ourselves unintentionally into a deficit situation. So for that purpose, it makes sense that we have a solid understanding of, is that proposed budget for court revenue in 2022 a valid assumed number? And that would have to work with the court and the police department and the parties involved, the attorney, to work through that to see if $90,000 is a good assumption, or should we be budgeting closer to that $58,000 and $46,000 number?
In previous years, we had more income than previous year.
Yeah, and in previous years, this is going to get a little messy. I'll pull it down and show it again once it's getting pretty. Kent, you're about to say something? No, okay. So if we're looking at municipal court revenue, this is tracking back to 2014. Our municipal court revenue in 2014.
Boy, that has gone down.
It's 100,000, 15, 104,000, 16, 88,000, 17, 70,000, 18, 99, 19, 103, 20, 57, and our projected for 21 is 46.
And so 2020 was actually before COVID had even started.
No, 2020, it started, we really
February.
we started having restrictions, state level restrictions in March.
Yeah, definitely by March.
How many offers did we have in 2015? How many officers, police officers?
I don't know. I believe we had,
What, in court?
no, how many police officers? I think we had 3 or 4.
Four.
What about in 18, 19, say 19?
18 and 19, we had 2.
So not that much difference. Okay.
Yeah, and in 2021, we still had 2.
Okay.
Well, 2 full-time equivalents. At least that's what we had budgeted for. Now we've had some problems retaining our part-time police officers.
So whenever we budget that amount, where is the paper? Can you pull up the screen that shows where exactly the money is going to on the court?
So I can pull up some court-related expenses, but we use the court revenue as a general fund. It goes in one big bucket. and then we pay out of that big bucket. We don't separate department revenues and expenses.
So like whenever we
But we
have,
could.
whenever we have how much we pay, like the judge, how much his clerk gets paid, like where is that money going to?
So we have,
Because I think we used to have 2 clerks and now I think we only have 1.
that's
right?
correct. We only have one and she's only here 2 days a week.
So they may end up having to hire somebody.
So the
Or
total,
at least increase their.
the total cost for the court personnel cost, which is not the total cost of the court, but personnel cost for fiscal year 22 is just under $34,000. And then there's some IT costs that they have, about $4,000 for a specific program that they use. So, and they also have their warrants application costs a couple $1,000s. It's probably reasonable to assume somewhere around $45,000, probably less, is what the cost to have the court.
$45,000 less.
$45,000 or less is probably, and that's not including their city attorney's costs though. That's the judge, our court clerk, and some of their IT operating expenses. That's it, roughly. So in terms of the court itself, will break even, but we're not using any of those not able to use any of those revenues.
I think I'm hearing you, so the clerk is here part-time, right?
Yep.
And then what days or?
Mondays and Tuesdays.
Mondays and Tuesdays. And then how many times is the judge here?
Believe he's salaried and he shows up when he needs to show up.
Yes, but he also does stuff from home,
Yeah.
but,
Does he ever
but
come
I
in?
don't know.
Yeah, he was in, like, for example, he was in today for a short period of time, and he comes in every once in a while. He has an office in the back.
When we held court, was he here?
Mhm.
You always have it.
The purpose of this discussion was intended to highlight potential risks that are built into the budget, because we're going to be talking about some other, what I see as opportunities on the personnel side. And so it's going to be the city council's decision to weigh those risks as we go forward in our budget. And
So Jared, since
Yeah.
you were saying that it's possibly like, we're 45K less than the budget, what it is that what you're saying? How it goes into a big pot? Like if we did take money away from that budget, we would be able to use it, say, for possibly, other personnel, maybe with,
so okay, I can see where you're going.
yes.
So with a court budget of $90,000 and a court operating cost of about $45,000, the remaining $45,000 is available for the city to use on pothole repairs, other salaries, the parks, name it.
That's what-
All of the courts was.
No, it's not.
that was all
No, it's not. It's not
restricted.
only some of it.
Ah, okay, okay,
So, yeah.
okay.
So that's why it's important. That's why I'm saying there's a risk here. If we over project our revenues and we don't meet them, that money that's being used for the parks or salaries or what have you, now we're in a deficit situation. Now, I think $90,000 is a reasonable estimate given how the performance prior to COVID was meeting that level of performance.
So would you agree with court, like the court revenue, we should have like number of citations issued, just have a more detailed,
We cannot say
have a-
citation.
huh, what?
We cannot
We
say.
can't, we can't dictate a number.
I did not say dictate. I said, can we have that information? Like, I'm not asking for quotas. I'm just saying, can we see what the activity is? That's all I'm saying.
Maybe we might need to hire some more.
Well, I just need to,
Traffic officers.
well, I just need to
More
see,
police.
like I said, it's not
It would
about
be
quotas,
beneficial.
it's about how many citations that we're getting. I
Well,
mean,
apparently it's less because.
oh,
we're
it's pretty
generating
obvious it's less.
money.
That's what I'm saying. There's
But I
less
think that
money.
should be part of the
So-
police report.
That's less money. Not saying it's quotas again. I'm just saying if we have more detailed information, we can precisely determine what is our lack of revenue coming from. If I can say it that way. Is that-
The lack of revenue
It's
is really coming
statistics.
from, we're very heavily dependent on one income source, property taxes.
Yes.
A lot of cities, they're not going to rely on municipal court revenues as heavily or as much as Martindale is. Most of them are going to have the sales tax numbers in the hundreds of thousands. But we don't have that luxury and benefit right now. So I think this issue is somewhat particular to just not having a diverse revenue source where we rely heavier on our municipal court. I think it would be worth asking the attorney, chief of police and municipal judge, is $90,000 a reasonable expectation for a fiscal year 22 budget?
I don't think anyone can
Predict.
honestly or even ethically answer that question.
Okay.
Because you cannot have that conversation without venturing into the territory of setting a goal and trying to meet that goal, which is the slippery slope towards a quota. And
I didn't say
well,
quota.
I know you didn't.
I didn't say quota. I just said information.
If you
Yes.
look over the last 5 years, the projections for the budget from the court has been based on the previous years. And we usually come in under, or at least we have tried to come in under what was gained in the previous years. Maybe we added another officer, and so we projected that it might be a little bit more. But that's where those numbers come from. It's the past projecting the future.
Right. What we've seen is a shock to the past and not knowing exactly the best way to respond to it.
Well, see, like even taking the average and taking the average from the past 3 years and then dividing it, you would still get around 61K.
It's 69,000.
Yes. So then even if you were to do that, I don't think like you have to like, you could just like do your average to get what you think what it would be.
And I would want to see it. I would
3 years,
see it
5
be.
years, whatever.
I would want
Is
to see
it-
the next year's budget report be very low, not knowing how things are going to roll in, not knowing what our president and federal government are going to relieve, and that cities have to just eat. So that's my way in. Is I would like to see that number low, and then it's Christmas when we exceed it.
Yeah, I was wondering why you were projecting it so high.
Well,
It's to cover us.
it's obvious. I mean, you got multiple years.
Prior to COVID,
Yeah.
$90,000 would have been a reasonable budget.
Exactly. They've been reasonable. So-
Let's just go low and move on.
Okay.
Okay, just discussion.
Any other comments on that? Because I will go back and make it lower. And then I think that's going to clarify some of the expenses options that we have from us. But that's good discussion. All right, pull this back down. All right, that takes us through sales tax. Franchise fees are pretty stable. And other general funds that we get, miscellaneous general funds that we get are a little less harder to predict, but pretty well. All right. That takes us to our property tax rate discussion. So property taxes come in and they're based off of the difference between last year's appraised value and this year's appraised value. The total revenues that the city can collect is limited by a couple of factors. One, if you go above what they call a voter approval rate, the tax rate has to be put on a ballot and approved by residents of the city. The voter approval rate is a maximum amount that the city council can just choose to elect and accept and go on with. Any rate lower than that. The no new revenue rate is what the rate would be if we were to not increase our revenues on that prior year's tax base going forward. And so to make that calculation, the rate goes down. Our fiscal year 20 rate, or 21 rate, that should be, was 0.4430. The fact that our voter approval rate is lower than a rate for even the last year tells you that the appraised values came in above the 3.5% threshold. So the proposal that's in this budget is to accept the voter approval rate as the proposed rate. And that would generate a revenue of about $357,000, I'll round up, for our general fund budget.
Okay, I'm confused, because you're saying voter approval rate is 0.42, and here you're saying you want our rate to be 0.44?
Oops, sorry. Somehow, I'm just gonna make it a quick little change. Hopefully. So the blue line is the revenue. More revenue is on right. So our 2021 rate was 44 cents for every $100 of value, roughly. We cannot keep that same tax rate into the next year without getting the vote, taking it on, put it on the ballot and have the voters approve that we keep it at that rate. We have to reduce it to not go to a ballot to 42 cents, 42 and 11/10 of a cent per $100 or less. So the proposal is to consider using the voter approval rate as the adopted rate by the city council.
I'm good with that.
That sounds good to me, because
Yeah.
who's gonna vote for a tax increase?
Yeah.
I would vote for the 444, my taxes are enough as it is.
Well, wouldn't the revenue go up anyway if the voter approval rate was the same, if the appraisals are higher?
Yeah, so that's basically what's happening, is that the appraisals came in so much higher that we are forced to reduce our tax rate to stay under without putting it on a ballot. Eventually, what's going to happen, and this is more of a political commentary, but the restrictions on the voter approval rate will slowly, as if property values year over year increase by more than the 3.5% of that's allowed, that voter approval rate will continue to degrade and become less and less and less as the years go on. So 20 years from now, your property taxes are going to be much less in terms of a rate that's being charged.
Because they got the appraisal up so high.
Yeah. Because they're going to be priced. So, any other questions on this one?
But just like the amount is not set by the appraisal district itself, it's from the state of Texas.
So, this might. This will kind of give you a sense of how everything comes in. So this is it's going to take me a while to get to the Martindale.
So what sheet is this?
This is a report that we get from the Caldwell County CAD,
Oh, okay.
and it tells you, take some time to get used to it. If you focus on the right-hand side of the screen, it'll eventually tell you that the net taxable value of properties within the city of Martindale is 86, almost $87 million of property value. Of that, $18 million of that value is frozen for those who are over the age of 65, which is handled at, so their taxable amount, their revenue that would generate is calculated separately from the rest of the, so that's why they give you a freeze adjusted taxable rate at 68 million, almost $69 million is what's used in the calculation of how much revenue would be generated per a given rate. And this is, you'll see this is an example of how that would be calculated for the current rate of this most recent year, which was 44.33 cents per $100. The freeze adjusted rate is added then after the fact. In our budget worksheets,
See, finally, there's something good about getting old.
in our budget worksheets, you take those numbers, you do some math, it spits out some rates, you plug in those rates, and it gives you a projection of what the city revenue would be with the data. So this data here on the top part comes from the CAD. You do some math, gives you a projection of the city revenue for a given rate. These voter approval rates and no new revenue rates, those are provided by the CAD office, like the official ones. They have not provided that. That's what they're going to do probably in the next 3 weeks or so, 3-4 weeks. In the meantime, as we're developing the budget, given the data that we have, at least able to make some estimates of what would likely be in the ballpark of. I have asked them to go ahead. There is a provision regarding property taxes, where if your prior years, if your adopted tax rate was less than the voter approval rate, then 2 years later, up to 2 years going back in the past, or 2 years forward, depending on how you look at it, you can recapture that, air quotes, lost revenue that would have been available to the city. And so I've asked the CAD office and the appraiser who's working Martindale to consider what the difference between our adopted rates and our voter approval rates were for the last 2 years, and consider that in the calculation for the voter approval rate, what that would be in fiscal year 21. And so what that could mean is that 42 cents per $100 actually would go up, possibly, 44 cents again, or 40, I don't have a good estimate for it. Last year was, the difference was very small. The year before that was very large, because it was the voter approval rate increase was 8.5%, not 3.5%. So there's essentially 5% of revenues, 5% of, 60 some $million of what that time was. And there's pretty complicated algebra to put it all together, but that's what I get paid to do. I asked them to go ahead and do it so we could have that discussion when the time comes.
Jared, that is a notion that in years past has been quite difficult for residents and some council members to truly wrap their minds around. It sounds like we're increasing the taxes, but we're really not. When we go back and capture, it's money that we'll never get back, and it's critical that we stay on top of that.
Yeah, it's as we mentioned, that over the years, as property values increases, those rates are going to continue to go down. It forces cities to be less reliant on property taxes, which is a significant risk to a city of Martindale that relies so heavily on property taxes. If we lose, in 5-10 years, we better be really doing very well in our sales tax to keep pace with the costs that the city's going to incur for services and everything else, personnel. So Lisa makes a good point, is that we should, when we get that data, we should seriously consider taking advantage of it while we can this year, because it's the interest compounds. Actually, all right. Going back to PowerPoint presentation. So I saw some head nods, didn't hear any no's. Are we okay with, for now, using the voter approval rate as we consider the budget?
I am.
I
Yes.
All right, now we're getting into expenses. And so given our previous discussion about the court revenue and being conservative there, this probably changes somewhat. So on the start at the left, payroll expenses. The proposed budget had a significant increase in payroll expenses, and I'll get to that in a second. But it's mainly a reflection of proposing that we increase the total of full-time equivalent positions within the city. I'll get into why that is. It's the cost grant and some other items. The operating expenses, you'll see some variation in those charts and numbers. That's caused by changes in elections costs, parks costs, and training related budget versus actual expenses. So historically, we budget about 40, at least last year we budgeted $43,000. This year, again, looking at a $43,000 budget for operating expenses. In the past, we have not spent to that budget in all of those areas. But given the variability in the elections and the intention to spend more in parks and the intention to spend more in training, I think it's still prudent to keep the 43,000 budget number going into the years. The next big one on here is the contractual services. This you'll see has a budgeted amount slight. So I'm comparing the turquoise to the green. The green is our 21 budget. Turquoise is the proposed budget. Somewhat less than our prior budget, and that's a reflection of some of the changes that we've seen in the actuals and projections. We can get into those details if we want. We'll hit some of the high items that are within that contract services. The capital investment transfer, this is something that we started doing in fiscal year 21. We went ahead and budgeted for a transfer to our capital improvement fund of $4,000. Our future year spend plan was pretty aggressive and adding more money into that piggy bank of capital improvements, long-term capital improvements. The intention of keeping it, of matching our future year spend plan is because we have a hazard mitigation grant that has a matching contribution. So we received the grant for $6.7 million, but we have a 1% match requirement. So that means we're going to have a $67,000 about bill coming due. Most of that bill is going to come during the construction phase of that project. It's probably about 2 years out. But in the meantime, I think it makes sense for us to continue to squirrel away money in our capital improvement. And then when it comes time for those construction expenses and our matching contribution, that we pay it out of our capital improvement fund, that we squirreled some money away in. So that's why you see the dramatic increase from zeros to now a budget item of $42,000.
Okay, what's the difference between the capital improvement? Our monies that we're saving in the text pool.
Most of our capital improvement, well, actually, I won't say most. We use the text pool as an interest-bearing account for where we have savings or where we have funding that goes. We don't want to have more money in the bank than is covered by FDIC insurance. And so a lot of times as we get money coming in and our bank accounts get so high, we start shoveling money off to the PFIA accounts so that we're protected a little better. Still subject to the economy and such, but in the past, that might have bore some interest. Might start bearing interest again here soon. We'll see what the Fed does and everything else. But our long-term capital improvement fund is essentially a savings account that we have, not an actual savings account at the bank, but accounting wise, what we're keeping money set aside in our books in the PFIA funds for future use. That's what we're going to use for Lockhart Street, for example. This funding will go mainly towards the matching contribution that's required for our Northwest River Road hazard mitigation grant. You'll see the next one is emergency savings fund. Historically, we've put about $15,000 away when we were doing our future year spend plan. We set a goal to, by fiscal year 25, to achieve our savings goal, emergency savings goal of $250,000. We're almost there. And so what we did was, instead of continuing that level of savings per year of 15,000 per year, to just slow that down a little bit, use it towards other things, and we'll get there by 2025. And so that's why you see a decrease from $15,000 to $7,000. This last item was something that came up in our future year spend plan. It's a city-sponsored commerce grant. The idea was, in our strategic plan, for the city to put a foot forward in improving the commercial environment of the city. And so a city-sponsored commerce grant was something that was bantered about, and kind of more or less a placeholder of, if we want to do something, this can be something we want to do. The thought on it would be, we'd open up a grant opportunity for local businesses, and they would make a proposal that would have some sort of immediate and lasting positive impact on the commercial environment in Martindale. We probably want to be pretty more descriptive than that if we want to go forward with a program like this. That way we're not shelling out money for somebody to do something that they're already going to do. But you also don't want it to be something like, hey, I'm having a party this weekend, give me $5,000 for a commerce grant. No, we want something that would have more of a permanent and lasting improvement. So if, and it would be open, not just businesses, it could be a non-governmental 503c organization. They wanted to do some sort of, I don't know what it could be. Incentive plan. If there was some sort of infrastructure that they needed, a small business wanted to set up an art studio in one of the vacant buildings downtown, and they needed some seed money to help them get off the ground, then they could apply for this grant or what have you. So something that I included in the budget. We don't have plans for it yet. It's something that if we budget for it, if we get plans, we can do it. If not, so be it. All right. Any questions on some of these summary items before we get into the payroll personnel expenses?
For the city-sponsored commerce grant, does that carry over year to year?
Yeah, in our future year spend plan, we had set aside $5,000 each year. And so each year would be a new application process where people could submit proposals to the city, and city council could say, oh, this one looks like a winner, and then issue them the grant. And then there'd probably be some strings attached to how to use it.
Does the city reach out to individuals to even know that it even exists?
We would probably put the posting out, and that we're accepting proposals for this grant opportunity, and probably leave it out for months at a time, probably good 60 to 90 days to make sure people have enough time to really think something through and isn't caught by surprise. Unlike the cost grant.
It's a good idea.
Yeah. All right. Let's get in, unless there's any other questions, we'll get into personnel. This is where the items, the city-sponsored commerce grant and the payroll personnel expenses, are some of those things are probably going to be on the chopping block, given our port revenue discussion. So, here's the proposed changes or items that's showing this increase. You'll see the chart on the right-hand side of the screen showing the increase in personnel costs and what The bullet points on the left is what I would propose that be considered. The first one is a 2% cost of living increase for the during the first full pay period in January. That continues a practice that the city has done for at least as long as I've been here, of having an annual nominal increase in pay rates. The cops hiring program, go ahead, you have a question on
Is
that?
it up to 2%
No, it's 2% across the board.
without, no matter what the evaluation is?
Correct. This isn't a performance bonus or increase. This is a cost of living increase. And I was concerned that, is that enough? Is that right? So I looked at some of the data, the Consumer something Bureau that put out cost of living data where they track it month over month. We're at 3%, which is where we were the past 2 years. We're a smidge high of where where the economy was for this area. As COVID happened, that cost of living decreased, but in the last, March and April, when they're putting out the statistics, that cost of living was skyrocketing. So it's down, but it's up a lot over a short period of time. 2% looked like a fair number to use, and also helped get us to some of these other things that we're looking to do. The COPS grant, which we discussed previously, that $2,500 is included in the 319. Also, the next item is going to a $15 minimum wage for city employees in an effort to improve recruitment and retention. We've had turnover at our city utility clerk position. Not necessary. One may have been related to the wage we were offering, because it's not, beneficial for her to continue employment given the earnings that she made. But the biggest area I think is recruitment could help as we look towards next year and likely having other vacancies. Improving our candidate pool by offering $15 an hour, I think is a way to do that.
What do we pay now?
Between $12 and $15 to start out, but this would just level set that across for the court clerk and our utility clerks, who may not be making the $15 an hour now. That doesn't have as big of an impact in our general fund. It has a bigger impact on our utility fund, but it's here, so I figured I'd talk about it here. It also continues the additional day a week for the code enforcement. So we have one of our employees who's spending a day a week to do code enforcement and additional duties. We also have an employee doing a day a week working on the park strategic planning. That additional expense is included in this next budget year. And then in May, we expect there to be some turnover within the office with some retirements and other items. So during that time, the code enforcement duties would likely end due to personnel changes. The park strategic plan will be done by that point, so there won't be any need for the 8 hours to continue. But I think the city could greatly benefit from having a part-time building and plannings director starting about that time. So that would be somebody coming in 2 days a week that would handle code enforcement and a lot of the other issues that we discussed previously. And I have on the next slide some more data on those roles and details.
Contracted, not,
Be an employee.
part-time, not contracted.
Yes, a part-time employee.
Sherry, I'm gonna go and zoom in from home.
Okay. And then all those things add to the rate. What this doesn't do is it also decreases funding for the performance award system. We had budgeted for FY21. We ended up using those funds on something else. I don't see a clear path to bring that up with these other changes that we're making. And so for that reason, it was discontinued. on the building and planning director part-time position. Here's the job that they would do. This is taken from a org chart draft that city council has previously seen. Right now, the building official, zoning administrator, city planner, historic preservation official, floodplain administrator, all those duties are currently assigned to me. The permits and code enforcement and are done by a combination of our utility clerks, our municipal secretary, our city clerk, the mayor, police in some cases. So our zoning chair and vice chair are involved in permitting. Permits are a large workload right now that's being done by probably, this is an exaggeration, 5 or 6 different people on any given different day. Centralizing that to a specific person, giving them the duties to manage it and control it, will create a lot of efficiencies and just not as many drop balls. Help streamline that process. And this person would also take over the planning activities and be involved in recommending development agreements and working through that process. So it takes a lot of that building and planning responsibilities, giving them to somebody else on staff, freeing me up to do other work. I'd probably be involved in some of the items, but not necessarily like day-to-day minutia of that activity. Years down the road, if I weren't here and the city wanted to hire a full-time city administrator, these duties could probably go back to city administrator. But having these duties with a part-time city administrator, I'm telling you, it's not working. It's breaking the staff. And it's affecting people who come in and have to do business in the city. So that takes us to, all right, that impacts the budget for FY22 substantially. It takes our budgeted personnel expenses from FY21 of just under $300,000 and increases it by $20,000 in fiscal year 22. That's a significant change, but considering the COPS grant continues to have increasing matching portions, I think it's important to also look at what it does over a 5-year period. So if the colors have changed. What this is intended to show is the difference between fiscal year 21 baseline, which is in the green columns, the future year spend plan, which is in blue. If we went to just a $15 an hour and the COPS grant and omitted the building and planning director position, what that would look like is in yellow. And then doing all of the above is in that orange brick color. And so year over year, you can see how those numbers and trends are different from one alternative to the next. If we were to keep doing the same thing as our fiscal 21 baseline, and all we did was 1 year to the next was a 2% cost of living increase, that's what that green bar is showing you, from 294 in FY22 to 318 in FY26. Our future year spend plan already included planning activities for a COPS grant. It just had it happening in fiscal year 23, not 22. But over the length of time, you'll see that we come out right about what our future year spend plan has at for being able to have a COPS grant and a building and planning director over time. Some of that is due to different plan assumptions. Future year spend plan uses a 3% cost of living increase annually. This would only have a 2% increase annually. Those savings
But
are
you're also saying raising everybody's salary.
right.
15, and it's going to affect everybody that is already.
Right. That's put into
Everybody's
this.
gonna end up getting a raise.
Yeah. Eventually, there'll be a couple individuals who are definitely getting raises, and it increases costs going forward.
Right.
So I don't want to just have city council focus on just, hey, can we afford this in FY22? If we're going to take one of these approaches, what's the 5-year outlook on it? I think it's achievable, but that was only achievable with the court revenues at $90,000, or which was based on prior years. If we reduce those court revenues, we're looking at different alternatives. We're taking it out of somewhere else. So I'll kind of leave it there for thoughts and considerations. I know it's a lot of information, data I threw at you, but if there's any kind of gut feelings on this, I'll take it and that'll help me as I look for revisions next time.
I have a comment.
Yeah.
So with adding a new person, that would, the learning curve to do these permits
And training.
and training is phenomenal. And, just having just those of us in the office just trying to learn how to do all of this stuff and to read it. I was amazed when I was watching Jared yesterday because this lady came in and she wants to just have a food truck. Well, you've got to know all the ordinances, what permits she has to have. She had to have 3 different permits. I mean, and to know all of that stuff, it just takes a long time to learn it all. And if you have one person that's going to go from one administration to the next, because we're having elections every year where we're going to have new council people and, and then personnel changes, having a person that can handle the building permits, because we're having people come in all the time. We're going to have new buildings that are being built. We're going to have new businesses going in. We're bookend on both ends, and we just need somebody who can handle that stuff. And then we can say, hey, the person that's going to do that is going to be here on Monday and Tuesday. Come back on Monday and Tuesday.
But that's when you book their appointment.
Or, make an appointment or something. It would really be valuable to the city to have that
So
person.
something really heavy duty to consider.
Yes.
I think it would be a good idea because since and a lot of the planning and zoning stuff, it's taking forever just to get some kind of permit to do anything.
I mean, somebody came in with a fence permit, and it quickly turned into a potential planning and zoning issue, and it languished for a few weeks. And it wasn't till I had an opportunity when the gentleman was here and basically standing on my desk saying, "Figure this out right now," that they'll put, all right, I'll figure it out right now and put it aside. And we eventually came to an understanding of, all right, here's why it went to zoning for a variance change. But if you do this, it's not, your fence isn't in the site triangle. Now your fence could be this high instead of that high. If you move your fence up by a couple feet, here's what the floodplain.
Yeah.
It probably took an hour and a half of my time yesterday, the other day to do that. Hour and a half of a part-time employee's time, who that's their job, not a big deal. Hour and a half of my time when there's other things going on, and Sylvia's time, or we're starting to have, the mayor's time, and she's, one mayor to the next. Rob did the same thing. I'm sure Kim probably did too.
Yeah,
Handle
they
these
have about an
issues.
hour and a half of a volunteer's time, and it's not even their job. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, we're drowning in it.
And we need somebody who knows what they're doing so they can give quicker answers. So it really is something to think about.
Yeah.
So the intention would be to hire somebody who has some experience with planning and zoning, building. We're not necessarily be looking for like a building inspector. We have a building inspector team that we contract with, but somebody who's familiar with municipal regulations on these issues that would be able to come in and apply them. And if they knew our ordinances, even better. And so that person, the logical time we could do it at any time. We could bring that person on soon. The logical timing for me says whenever the parks plan is completed, we could technically bring them on sooner. It's obvious it's going to have a different pay rate than our current people doing code enforcement work and parks planning work. May is going to have a lot of turnover. That might be a good time to put them in at
May of next year.
May of 22, but it wouldn't prevent us from necessarily doing it sooner. You'd see the budget would probably be a couple $1,000s increase, probably be more like a 321.
So if we could hire somebody at the beginning of our fiscal year.
You did say there was gonna be a lot of turnover. Would you want to spread that turnover a little bit because you're gonna have an impact of turnover?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on the personnel. You could want to bring somebody on sooner or other people, or start other people later. May is what works out budget-wise for least cost. If you do it the other ways, it'd be better for the city, but it'd be a little more expensive.
You're saying have somebody hired by May of 22?
Yeah.
Okay, so start interviewing.
Yeah, we're probably interviewing in March or February, going.
If they can find somebody that's retired and want to come back in on a part-time basis or something.
Yeah.
So you're talking about maybe hiring
I have no
somebody?
experience in that.
Yeah, so this would be a new.
Hiring somebody like in May for doing the, building and.
Yeah, so the position, I'm working
Why
on,
not sooner?
I'm working on the side on re-looking at our city officers ordinance and how we handle department directors. We could do it sooner. I could, if that's a recommendation, I could look at doing that budget, having those people come on sooner, or that person come on sooner. But
It's working efficiently.
Yeah. It's just more cost.
Yeah. Okay, so how long are we planning on doing this workshop?
If we could at least get through the general fund, that'd be helpful. Are there any other comments, concerns, recommendations on the personnel expenses? Everybody's on board with the 15-hour wage, looking at hiring a building plan director.
I'm not sure about the 15.
The difference is on our general fund side is only a couple $1,000, about $2,000.
You say should be higher or lower? Well, you're saying should be higher.
Well, I mean, right now, we're still a little bit higher than the state minimum.
Yeah, but I see his point. I see his point that,
Yeah.
you got, fast food places are paying 12 right now. You know?
Gas station will hire you for $15 an hour. Chipotle will.
So I'm just saying, Walmart is probably up to that, so I agree with that. I think you're correct. 15 an hour is pretty reasonable, I think, in my opinion.
Especially for part-time when you're not getting benefits.
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't the salary of replacing somebody that, say, retires or whatever, wouldn't their starting salary be less than what
Yeah, but probably
that person was making when they left?
it would be. It wouldn't be by a large amount, but and that's calculated in here.
Oh.
This considers a retirement and then a new hire to backfill at a different pay rate.
So do you think you'd have a lot more interest in people coming in to hire for 15?
I think I'll get some better candidates, yes.
So,
Yeah.
well, you're dealing with this every day.
We've done a couple different targeted recruitments. We've targeted the university and online and TML. The last one we targeted and we used Indeed. We got 40 some odd applications. We only, after reviewing those applications, only interviewed 3 of them, or requested interviews with 3 of them. interviewed two, one dropped out. The other, we decided to walk away from because other options came available.
Is that for 12? Okay. Well, you've already gone through that, so it looks like 12's not enough money.
12 isn't going to get it where.
All right.
Okay, I agree with you. Okay.
Street and road maintenance repair. This is what I want to focus on is on the right-hand column, is the combined general fund and special revenue fund, street and road maintenance. So the two fund sources combined have a $46,000 budget for pothole fixes, street and road maintenance repair. You'll see the street and roads restricted fund goes up from $18,000 to $24,000. That's reflective of the increase in sales tax because it's a 20% of the total gross sales tax. That's why that goes up. On the general fund side, still allocating money out of our general fund for street and road repair at the same rate that we have last year.
Would that include maybe an interlocal agreement? With the county?
Yeah. The interlocal agreement costs would come out of this.
Okay. Thanks, sir. All right, answer my question.
Questions on street and road maintenance repair? Other general fund items of interest, election expenses, looking at a slight reduction in budgeting for our election expenses. Some of that is hedging a bet that we won't have any more duplicative elections on certain issues. Also, mainly what this does is recognizes that we have a previous elections administrator on staff who is familiar with these things. We won't have to contract out quite as much.
And if we have it with the county.
Yeah, and if we were able to use the county for our elections, then we don't have to pay for the rental costs all on our own. We could share those costs and get some better economies of scale on our equipment. Things that don't change are the people who are in the polling site. We still have to pay for them.
I know well, you want to talk about the park expense first?
Yeah, so park expenses. So we've budgeted at this next year at $19,000, which continues the level that we had in 2021, where we've made substantial investments in our park maintenance and improvements. And so it continues in this one. The yellow line is a projected a difference of $3,000. I'm sure we'll find a way to spend it. If nothing else, that's the tree removal.
It seems like, though, that we would need more than that with the increased maintenance on phase 1, 2, and 3, with Alan Bates needing more improvements such as the trails, the mulch, and the fall protected mulch in the playground and the swings, with the master plan that would have to be drawn up by an engineer, or if we get a grant to do that. I just think that having that stagnant amount of 19 is not enough to really project how we need a maintenance person for the parks. This has nothing about any kind of maintenance staff. I do an extreme amount of volunteer maintenance during the summertime with garbage, with recycling, with picking up things. Jeff Latimer is not coming as often as he used to. So we need a part-time maintenance person during the summer for the parks, or we're going to start to see garbage from those cans, which aren't even enough, is going to be spread out all over the place after, say, Saturday and Sunday. And that is just such a turnoff to come to a park and see garbage cans overflowing, flies. I mean, a mulch that isn't sufficient for children to play in those swings and the playground. I just think that it needs to be more. We need a maintenance person. We
I
need,
agree.
we don't have anyone to fall back on for electrical work on the lights and the plugs. We've been talking about a water meter for the park. We've been talking about, which has been mentioned, a wheelchair accessible water fountain. I mean, we need to get more money in there to actually make the parks a more attractive an attractive thing to come to the city. I just don't think that.
Well, yeah. Phase one right now is ripped to shreds and there's trash all over the place. It's bad.
It is bad. We need a graded road there. We need road base there.
Okay, so we need to keep this at a high.
Higher than 19.
Oh, you
That's
think it
all I'm
needs to go
saying. It
high?
needs to be like 25,000, something.
So
right?
we can get a regularly scheduled part-time.
We do have our, we don't have we use, our handyman
Well,
to do some stuff. We also have, the guy who cleans our city offices, manage some of the trash bins and making sure that those are getting taken care of, but that's only a once a week sort of thing.
Yeah, it really isn't enough.
he can't
for
come
the
on
summer.
weekends.
I mean, we need a garbage can in enclosure eventually, because I'm getting more people dropping off garbage in those cans. They're full. They're constantly full. I don't want to go and hedge this all out now, but
No,
I don't think that that's enough.
Do you have a proposed offset for the, I mean, I want to be looking at offsets already if we're reducing the, court revenue amounts, but a proposed offset for the parks to increase it to 25,600.
You mean, where's the money gonna come from?
Right, do you have a recommendation on that?
No, not where's the money going to come from, but what do you propose that it's going to pay for? Do you feel like the difference between 19 and 25 will take care of that part-time person? Have you put pencil to paper on it, or is that just a out of the air number?
That's out of the air. I think it would actually need to be more than that, because if we're talking about paying someone even $15 an hour to be a regular maintenance person there, even on the weekends, but
That's probably about $15,000. It's be for about 900 hours, 800 some odd hours of work for a given year.
summer's going to be a lot busier than the winters, so.
So 800 hours, if you spread that across, however much, it's probably about $15,000 to get a part-timer.
Okay. Well, I'll meet with the Parks Advisory Committee before the next.
We have got to okay people on that committee too. We
Yeah.
haven't done that. We
Yeah,
got to
no,
do
We'll
that.
do that at the next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, so no, I'm just saying there's a need to increase that if we actually want these parks to be a draw and to be maintained properly and to have roads that are not rutted out and look bad, and it's just minimal. I think we would get more people coming in and spending more money here if the parks were more attractive. That's all.
I happen to agree with you on that. Any other comments on the parks expense item? All right. Audit fees, keeping that at budgeted $20,000. There has been a trend recently of that cost going down. Some of that is due because we're using our same auditor year over year. We're probably about due to do a refresh on who does our audits. You don't want to stick with the same auditor for too long. So
Get a lot of cut and paste.
possibly you just know, are they poking in all the corners that they should be? Someone who's brand new might look at things a little bit differently. I think that the standard or the recommendation is every 5 years to switch them over. While we're working with a more recent company, the personnel are essentially the same because the previous auditor was bought by another company and they're changed their name, but it's basically the firm. So I recommend against reducing our budget amount. Keeping it at 20 is probably okay.
It's been pretty steady, it looks like.
We had a big one in night 18, but that was after the theft and some of the other issues. Property maintenance, we've been saving some money on property maintenance and repair. This a lot of times comes down. We've been pushing some of that to the roads. We've been pushing some of that to the parks. That's why some of that's coming down. I think budgeting at 5,000 is a safe number. Unless there's any comments on that, keep going.
Hey, Jared,
Yeah.
it's Sonia. So,
Yeah.
Earlier, thank you, Lisa, for telling me how to unmute. I was like trying to talk, but I wanted to say, like,
You're welcome.
For Sam's, wanting to increase the budget, and I'm hearing you talk about the maintenance. Doesn't it seem to be more feasible as a city to have just a general maintenance man to be able to do like different things? Can that not be like coming out of like some of the parks budget and of the the other budget that we use for like cutting the grass and doing all that?
Yeah, so when we issue a task order, when we issue a task order for one of those jobs to be done, the task order slip separates out the different funds for the activity. So if we're going to have Tommy go out and mow the S curve and Fannin Street and the Allen Bates Park, that task order is set aside that the S curve goes to the street and roads maintenance fund. The Fannin Street properties go on a property maintenance repair fund, and that the Allen Bates goes to the parks expense fund.
Gotcha. Okay, thank
So we
you.
already do that. If you're recommending that we hire somebody as a staff instead of contracting out, the issue we have is the equipment and facilities, making sure that they have what we'd have to then equip them to do the work, and that's a pretty large expense. We don't have enough of that work happening to keep that equipment on site and going, and for it to make sense.
So
We do have somebody that we can call at any given time.
Not necessarily any given time, but we make arrangements about once a week. We evaluate what the property or parks maintenance needs might be for that ensuing week, and we schedule it out with a task order. It's more frequent during the months of April, May, June,
Sure.
before things start baking out.
Sure.
And then again in the fall, it gets a little bit. Any other discussion on these items? The attorney fees, the budget amount is at 28,000. That maintains the previously budgeted amount of 28,000. You've seen over the last couple of years it's been less, but I plan to put this man to work when it comes to code enforcement issues. And we also recently signed an updated contract, so that's also in there as well. So unless there's any comments on whether that would be sufficient, I think it's going to be close.
When is the last time he got a raise?
Last year.
Yeah, he got one. He's good.
Was it last year?
Got one.
Swear I thought it was this year.
Well, I think I came in after 3 years.
Oh, no, because I know, because we were all here, so it was probably about a year. You're right.
I'm not asking for one now.
Oh.
Thank you.
The IT upgrade and maintenance, the costs were a little higher in 19 and 20. some of that was due to, we're buying new computers. And so I don't intend for us to buy new computers, at least not at a large scale, in 22. So the budget at 14, I think is a reasonable point estimate. The projected cost is so much higher, the yellow bar, because those were expenses that we incurred in the general fund that are going to be covered by the Corona Relief Fund.
Right, so that's all this, the Zoom and this equipment
Yeah, a lot of it,
and
a lot of it.
all that. Does that also include Civic Plus?
Yes. No, Civic Plus is, I think, on a different line item.
Oh, really? That should be up there. IT.
There's an IT expense, but for one reason or another, I think we have that.
Under what, advertising or something?
Our chart of accounts isn't the most clear. Like, we have a separate line item for software expenses instead of IT expenses, but that's mainly for QuickBooks. Yeah, we have a website expense that is separate from the IT upgrade expense.
Oh, really?
That's budgeted at $4,000, and that covers the contract cost,
Right.
which I believe we're going to, next year will be in the last year of, and so we can renegotiate that
Yeah,
contract.
I'd like to see about renegotiating with, Versio too.
That is something we can look at. I'll have to pull the contract and see where
Just
we're
to
at.
change your password, they charge you 15, yeah, it may take only 15 minutes,
Yeah.
but it's, $100 an hour, that's like $25. Just to change a freaking password.
There are other expenses that I think we can be more efficient at when it comes to the Versio contract.
Yeah.
I've shared my concerns with them, and they weren't resolved to my liking.
Because a lot of times, city council
Wait,
people
say that
probably,
again, Jared.
I've shared my concerns with them about some of the costs that they charge, and it wasn't necessarily resolved to my liking. The specific issue
Okay.
being, we pay for Microsoft Office accounts, Office 365, which have a monthly rate attached to it, per account. Well,
All
when
right.
you do that as an enterprise or small business, you get Outlook Exchange email service as part of that service. Well, Versio charges us $10 per email account for the Zimbra hosted email, and they have refused to consider using a Microsoft email exchange due to what they consider to be security concerns. Now, Russia did just hack Microsoft.
Bring that to the council. Bring that to the council.
Right.
And let's look at that. I will tell you from the very beginning that we started using them. I've had issues, which I just choose to not talk about them because they don't ever get resolved.
Yeah. So
are they on a contract and when is it?
I have to look at it again. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's definitely something that is on my radar. Specifically, just the email accounts alone is $1,000. Is $1,000 over the course of a year. So we'll see.
I know it's got to be secure, but you can get it. I'm sure they.
Yeah.
Exchange server. Should have one. They're paying somebody else to do it.
They have a animosity against Microsoft products and Oracle products and Adobe products, and they use a lot of open source products, which
well, then they should be 10 times cheaper.
So right.
They may claim that that's why some of their costs are cheaper, but we'll see. I'm not seeing it in the
More secure.
Yeah, more secure, right? So that's an option that we might be looking at this next year.
Lisa had
Hey,
a comment.
Hey, oh, well, actually, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I thought of something else. We failed and did not do our future agenda items when we closed our other meeting. So maybe we can do it at the end of this workshop. And then that would be something that I would want to see on a future agenda item.
Oh,
All right.
yeah, but you can always email the mayor. She'll have it put on.
Shoot her an email
Well,
now.
yeah, it's more for the record in these settings.
Next item is the library contract. That contract increases this next fiscal year from $18,000 to $21,000.
So that, and this is the last year on their contract.
No, there is, I think, one or two more.
What's the justification for the increase?
That's what the state charges,
Oh.
to keep their certification
Not, well,
Their accreditation.
or accreditation.
I've had it explained to me a couple different ways. I think it still makes sense to talk to somebody from the Texas State Library Association or whatever.
I have looked it out.
So the $21,000 is reflective of the minimum local amount of funding that must be spent on operating services, and they have to meet that. Forget the acronym. Minimum operating expenses at MOE. That MOE for the local has to be at least $21,000 per statute in fiscal year, their fiscal year, which is a January to December calendar year. They have to meet that. So in order for them to satisfy that, we provide under the contract that same revenue. And that guarantees that they will continue to be accredited. And what their responsibility to that is to continue to meet those MOEs.
Right. And with this COVID and them being closed, I don't see how they.
Well, they did a lot of, they had a lot of IT expenses, operating expenses and things.
Right.
You know,
And
the
fact that
1
we're
gig
having to
fiber.
use Their web, their.
Internet.
And just, you know, if they have better.
Yeah. how does that
Website coverage
happen?
than the city.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and better security than the city. And it just, you
Yeah.
know.
I think it's a reasonable investment in the community amenity. If you look at it that way, I think $21,000 for a library as an amenity in the community is worth the investment. Now, that's up for it. We also have the contract. If there's some movement against on that contract, the risk is that they could run into accreditation issues. And now the city no longer has that amenity.
Right. I'm worried about also, you know, if Carol leaves, because she's working for free,
Well,
think
she
she's-
they've-
I
would
think she's-
eventually have to pay somebody.
well,
to
they've
come in.
assured me they're looking for another library.
But are they willing to work for free? I
Well,
mean,
that's what we.
I think they might.
Can't they take
Who,
it out?
hey,
of
who are y'all talking? Who are y'all talking about? I'm hearing mumbled.
Oh, the
What are y'all talking
library.
about?
We're
Okay.
talking about the library.
Okay.
So the question was, what are they doing about the librarian now that Carol Devaney is stepping away, and Mary Glaze mentioned that her understanding through discussions that they're looking to bring somebody on, and then the question was asked, can they
Hire somebody?
hire somebody with those funds? They might be able to. I don't know what goes in. I'd have to look at the form that they submit every year, which they provide me,
Right.
to see whether those
Yeah, she's-
kind of payroll expenses are included as an operating expense.
Oh, I don't.
I do not think that they can use any city funds for hiring somebody.
That could be. I don't know.
Yeah, they have other funds, other grants and
Right.
whatever.
And donations and
Uh-huh.
things.
But they can't use it for hiring somebody?
I don't know the actual language.
We'll get clarification for the next meeting.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah,
I mean,
I've been told no.
would it make a difference from the city's perspective? I don't
I
see
think for
how.
some people it would.
What's
It
that?
doesn't for me, but I know for some it does not for me because it all comes out in the wash. But I think for some folks it would.
Yeah, it just makes me wonder how they spend that amount each year when they have very cheap rent and they basically have all volunteers. I know we don't request a spreadsheet from
I
them
think
as
he
to
should
how
give
they're
you a
spending the
spreadsheet.
money.
Doesn't she give you something?
Not on the current contract.
Sorry.
From what I understand, most of their expenses are on IT services that are available to people who go to the library. So you can use their interlibrary loan program and pull up journal articles and different things. Those subscription accounts are pretty expensive. Some of them are like close to $5,000 a pop or something like that. So that's where most of it goes to, is the IT and subscription services and other.
Yeah, but they do have to give us an accounting of where they spend the.
I don't think it's in the most recent contract. I could look it up, but the only thing that they provide the city is the annual report that they send to the state.
No, they sent us a spreadsheet last time.
They have in the past, but that was under the previous
So
contract.
under the contract, well, we can change that.
You can negotiate
They
that.
just they just do it. We didn't request it. They just do it anyway. Or they did.
Yeah, but if it's not in their contract for them to do it, and I think we need to have it in their contract to do
Oh,
it.
fair. Sure.
Okay. All right, that's it.
That's all I got.
Any other
Seems
library?
fine.
Any other library discussion? All right, vehicle lease. We'll have a couple months of the lease costs. It's about $670 a month is the lease costs on.
Have they started it yet?
We
You hadn't gotten the vehicle.
haven't gotten the vehicle. The vehicle's imminently ready for pickup. There is some remaining paperwork that required the city attorney's signature, which required me to provide him supporting documentation, which I just provided last week while he was on family vacation. So we're going to have it wrapped up here in the next couple of days. They're
Next
ready.
couple of days, because I know that there were some city council members that were really concerned about this issue. And I guess if we're gonna make any changes, now is the time to do it. but-
The invoice has been received, so the car is ready for us to pick up.
Oh,
But before
so
we,
we've already paid for it,
well,
at least the first month.
we've received the invoice for it. We've committed to purchasing it.
Yeah.
The only thing that we're waiting to sign off on is the financing agreement.
Hey, on that lease, did they do the maintenance?
The financing agreement, there's a chance that we can't get it.
If there's a lease, do they do all the maintenance, like oil changes and?
No. For maintenance, we use the shop for San Marcos, and they typically just charge us parts. They don't charge us labor.
I thought, okay, I know some leases, they do all the maintenance.
This is a little different than your personal commercial lease. This is a government lease that has a clause in it says that if the city doesn't appropriate funds, then that breaks the lease and the car goes back to the lien leaseholder, and so you're off the road.
So basically, it'll still be 8,000 a year.
Yeah, it's 8,000.
This year's gonna be a little cheaper because we hadn't bought it yet.
Right. Exactly.
We hadn't paid our first bill.
Yeah.
Is that thing, do we eventually, could we have the buyout? Like a lot of times you have leases. Is it different leases? I know when you do have a lease, you've got X amount of mileage per year.
This doesn't have those restrictions on it. It's on.
Will we eventually own the car, I guess, my question?
Yes. Yes, we will.
What they're,
Yeah, it's basically a lease to purchase.
Yeah.
It's a car loan with a get out of jail clause in it. It's basically, it's a car loan but with special language that allows cities to enter into this type of agreement without having to go through an election to incur a debt. It's subject to annual appropriation is basically the terminology that's used.
That's that provision of the Constitution we dealt with on the San Marcos lawsuit, which essentially means no council can bind a subsequent council spend any particular amount of money. And so if this council says, or if the next council goes, nah, we don't want to do that, they'll force them to spend that money.
So we are forced to spend it?
No.
Oh,
No.
okay.
No.
But you'd lose your investment,
Yes,
Mhm.
that's correct.
so.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, next.
Any other discussion on the phone? All right. That's in the general fund. Utility fund's a lot less. Only have three slides. Yes, the utility fund, this one's important because it has substantial implications. So we talked about a $15 minimum wage. For most of those people who are being paid less than $15 currently are get charged against the utility fund. Doing that without any changes on a revenue side creates a deficit in the utility fund balance. And I'll get to that in the next slides. So here's the revenues. The wastewater services revenues. The data on here could change slightly once I have the updated customer records for the different, how many people are on what type of account. I have some older data, last year's data, so I just need to get that updated. But it's good enough for what we're doing now. So wastewater services, our total revenues for that were budgeted at $95,000 last year. Based on our customer data, I'd budget it to $91,000. The difference there between, you see in the historical data in the gray bars and our projections at 98,000, I think might be partially due to billing timelines and how I'm calculating that projection. It might also, that's probably what's causing that little bit of a difference. Or I'm just using outdated customer data. So 91,000 for wastewater services revenue. Solid waste revenue is based on our contract and customer data, would budget out at $207,000. And the miscellaneous utility fund revenues are credit card fees, late fees, lockout charges, and that kind of stuff. And then we have the negative revenue amount for the write-offs. Any questions on utility fund revenues?
wouldn't the revenues actually increase from 21 to 22 if, say, we have more customers? I mean, it would seem like we would project into having more customers in the course of the next year based on more buildings or more.
Yeah, I think we don't have, like I said, the data I have right now is potentially a little bit outdated. And that's why you see the proposed budget being a little bit less than our projection for 21. That projection for 21 could also be skewed because of when the billing cycles are. So there could be an extra half billing cycle or something in there that's causing the 98. So I have to dig into the data with Dwayne. Historically, it's been about $91,000 in 2018. 2019 was 88. 2020 was 91 again. It's a conservative estimate for now.
Okay. Thank you.
We don't actually take in 200.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. $207,000 on our solid waste bill.
We take
Now-
in, but we pay out
We-
150.
That's the segue I was looking
Yeah.
for. We spend out of that solid waste, $166,000 based on the, customer data that I had. So that's per the contract we have with TDS. The other expenses that come out of the utility fund are payroll and operating expenses. Payroll expense is a straight reimbursement calculation of the cost. The paychecks are paid out of the general fund.
Mhm.
The utility fund pays the general fund back for those paychecks for the utility clerks. So the payroll reimbursement is reflective of just those two clerks' payroll expenses. You'll see that the proposed budget has an increase in that payroll expense, and that's related to that pay rate increase. The operating expenses is a formula that we use. It's 15% of the utility fund revenues gets reimbursed is the general fund for operating expenses. So the cost for mail, the cost for office supplies, those sort of things. We did a deep dive last year, Dwayne and I and the former mayor, on is 15% the right number? And it came out that it was pretty dang close. We continue to use that as a good way to do it. That way we don't have different accounts for buying pencils and staplers. The wastewater system operations and repair, that budget item is in line with last year's budget and the 2020 actual cost. We've seen some increase there. That's just an older system costs more to maintain.
Now, we are gonna be able to spend a lot of money on repairing that. Hopefully that cost will eventually come down if we can get all that new equipment in.
Yeah, if we make investments in the electrical supply issues, make investments in some of
Those tanks that
the
are
aging.
broken or
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly. Hopefully we'll have less expenses there, but there's still going to be, the routine things that come up. And then the other expenses are, things that come up.
Yeah.
So this puts us in a budget deficit of $7,000, the minimum rate increase. My proposal, that and the wastewater system operations and repair costs are what's driving a lot of that. The solution I see to this is to consider increasing our wastewater rates. The last time from near as I can tell, the last time that these have been increased was about 7 years ago, was the last time the rates were adjusted. The proposal is to increase the minimum amount and the dollar per thousands of gallons to $1 on each. So this would affect, for most customers, vast majority of them, their monthly rate increase for wastewater would be $3 or less. More than half would see would just be $1. Some others would have $2 and some more would have $3. The remainder are those people who are heavy water users that would see a significant increase because it's cost per consumption. So I think this is a reasonable adjustment, considering that the costs for services and personnel have changed since 2014, and this is just keeping up to date with those changes.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Would this slide be in your deck? Would we be having this discussion over a minimum of $1 per customer and potentially as much as $3 if we were not in a deficit as due to COVID?
Yes. This is not related to COVID.
I know it's not related to COVID, but I'm just I'm looking for big picture perspective.
So the big picture perspective on this is that the city has not adjusted rates in 7 years.
Mhm.
Costs have continued to increase. And so we're looking at our rates and including a rate increase to keep up with those costs.
I get it, and I totally understand from a business perspective. I just know the impact. And then I also know that for what real reasons I don't totally understand that we have higher rates, and maybe that's been disproven. I'm having a hard time remembering higher rates for water that we have no control over, and for solid waste and wastewater than cities of our size in the state. I can't remember that. I feel like we've done that research before.
Texas Municipal League, in their most recent magazine, came out with a water and wastewater rate study for the state.
Wasn't that nice of them?
What's that?
I said, wasn't that nice of them?
I know. And actually, we responded to the survey that they came out with, so our data was included with their research.
Good.
We're a smidge high, but not overly so. So I think being a smidge high is due to we have a system that has a capacity to do more customers, but we don't have more customers to share that bill. That's how I would interpret that. Also, we have an older system that has a lot of deferred maintenance on it. So.
Yep. I personally would want to set that on the back. I would personally want to set that on the back burner and bring it back up if we can't figure out how to balance in some other way. That's not going to be my go-to. Because how much are we talking increasing? No, not per resident. How much is it going to increase our budget?
About $7,000 to $8,000. Let me pull it.
It's enough so that we can pay a higher rate for our
utility
employees.
clerks.
Yeah, our utility clerks.
So
which our customers are not receiving any additional service or any higher quality of service as a result of that. There's no ROI for that on there. Go ahead, Jared.
Well, that's true, but I think everything's going up.
What can you
Well, I don't want
anticipate?
to think
They probably will have better service.
Over the course of a year, the difference is $7,872 based on the customer data that I have available.
Okay. Thank you for that.
It goes
Thank you for that.
Annual billing from 9,500 to 98,450. Rounding.
I would like to.
Go ahead, Sonia.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Yes, Sonia.
No, ma'am.
I just wanted to add that I think since it's been 7 years since there has been an increase, just like, being a city, that we would go ahead and do it with it being an amount of $7,000. I also believe that, the service may be better. Maybe that would include someone staying a little bit later. Maybe that would include being open on Fridays. I mean, I'm sure that, it would be a service to our community. So I'm in agreement with it.
Expanded hours and/or an additional day of the week will increase personnel and more than eat that $7,000.
Not if they do their scheduling where they're not there one day of the week, and then just it's scheduling.
My point would be, I mean, $3 or less, 83% of the customer. I think that's not a big deal for a reliable sewer system. Because we got these lift stations and stuff, there's some deferred maintenance, like Jared said. And I think that's a cheap insurance for the city, if we have a little extra money.
But, well, we are getting money from the Harvey money to have, and we can use it for our lift stations and for our solid
Well,
waste.
Possibly, but I'm just
to
saying,
update it.
I would say that I think Jared's explanation that, it is an old system, and that we've had a lot of issues with that system lately. That's just my 2 cents worth. It's like an old car,
At the end of the day, yeah, at the end of the day, with justified justification, I will certainly move to go that direction. But like I said before, I would like to see this particular item just be set aside for till we get to the bottom of it, and then we can bring it back in and see where it fits. We've done that before on many different items. Just a strategy.
How about this? We'll put a maximum, instead of based on the over water usage, we'll say increase of $3 or less, or cannot exceed more than $5 or something like that. Could you put a cap on it?
Well, yeah, it's already in our ordinance. We'd have
I think that negatively incentivizes people to use more water. If you put a
Agreed.
cap on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because then you have a freeloader problem.
Well, they're gonna be paying higher water bill.
Well, they wouldn't be if you put a maximum on it. Hell, we wouldn't, the easy way to do this, we could look at what it looks like to not have it be attached to the minimum bill, and it's just on the usage. It only affects 50% or so of the people, and increasing the usage rate by $2 instead of $1.
And as a water conservationist, and I strive every month to use less water than I did last month, that would be something I could buy. That would be something, that's a wagon I would jump on.
I had a comment about the employees. I also thought about having them work on Friday. The problem is they each work 2 days a week. And we have them working an additional day because right now we do have the money, but that's not going to be a permanent thing. So if we added Friday, then we have 8 more hours we have to actually pay for, if that makes sense.
Yeah, if we went to an extra day, it would cost about $5,000 to do it.
If we
$5,000
like,
a month,
opened up
a
the
year,
office.
On Friday.
a month
Yeah,
or a year?
$5,000 a year.
For the year.
Is that for all of them? So I can write it here.
Well, to add 8 hours of pay.
Yeah, that doesn't include operating costs.
Yeah, you probably have some,
Still more overhead, we're gonna have the lights on more.
yeah, you're gonna have some lights on more and some other things, but,
That's part of the back thing.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I move with Jane.
Are we done?
technically, we have the special revenue fund that we hadn't gotten to yet, which is basically the only things really there for discussion are the hotel taxes, where we want to spend hotel taxes on.
We can change that and talk about that
We could probably,
at the end of another meeting.
we can probably get by, since they're self-funded. It's all, the hotel tax is all based off of the sales tax projection in terms of amount of revenue that's available. But if it's 3 line items on the hotel taxes: advertising, arts program, and signage. And looking at changing it to the proposed budget. But yeah, I'm okay with adjourning. I got what I needed. I got the guidance I needed from coming out of tonight. It's going to be very difficult to find ways to achieve some of the personnel changes that we're looking to do, and also balance a more conservative court revenue number. But I'll look at it, see what I can come up with, and if I can't find anything that makes sense, then I'll put the hard decisions to y'all with some recommendations for consideration.
Hey, Jared, and I'm good with adjourning too, but I just want to say,
Go ahead.
I just want to say one thing. I do have more. I have additional information to share with you about the hotel tax stuff that we've talked about before. I just want to bookmark that for later.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
A second,
Okay.
or she seconds.
So she moved, you seconded.
No, that's just the workshop. We already
This is
adjourned
the
the other meeting.
workshop,
We
yeah.
already adjourned the other meeting.
Yes, we
So we're
did.
done.
So,
But you still have to adjourn the workshop.
Oh, no, you have to, oh, sorry.
Are we
well,
gonna do future
we
agenda?
already adjourned that one. I've been
Okay.
adding stuff on
Okay,
there.
okay.
But,
So, all in favor?
Yeah. Sorry.
Aye.
Aye.
Lisa? Sonia?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. We are done.
Jared, very well done. your
Yes,
presentation.
thank you.
Yes.
Very
Well,
well.
I figured it'd be better.
This is the, one of the better ones I've seen. I've been my third year. This is the best one I've seen.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
It's very,
Yeah.
most of the time, they're not near.
I was feeding a baby while I put it together.
Ah, God.
All right, with that, I'm.
Yeah. I remember being a young parent.
Uh,
It's so much fun.